That's me.
Hey, can you hear us, Carla?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can, perfect.
Great.
All I see is your name though. I can't see the room, eh?
Yep, you're gonna have to give me a minute. As soon as I sit down, I'll spin the laptop around. And you will be able
Okay.
to see everybody.
Awesome.
Don't trip. Don't trip. Okay.
And I see Andy
Andy-
too.
Oh, Andy, awesome. Okay. Then I am
Way to
going.
go, Andy.
Okay, I will call the meeting to order then. Let's do roll call. Danielle Bailey's here. Ben Wynn.
Unwin.
Carter
Broadwell present.
Oh.
No, they're here. They're here.
They're here? Oh, okay. Okay, Carla Pennington Cross. Present. Andrew Franklin. We lost
Go
him.
ahead. I don't know why the speaker just bounced out of some. Oh, because I lost the session.
Andy, can you talk so I know if we can hear you?
Glendale-River School District, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. He's muted, isn't he? Or
Andy, are you muted? You are muted. I don't know if.
Okay,
Maybe
I-
just transition.
He looks muted to me.
Okay,
is.
well, we'll wait.
There's something in the chat.
Mm.
Not present yet. So he must be transitioning.
Okay. Thank you. All right, you may stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are gonna move on and I'm going to just quickly go over our equity non-negotiables. So we all start here on the same page. And those are that we accept each other, we are responsible to each other, we teach each other. I think that's gonna happen tonight. And we listen to each other. It's also gonna happen tonight. And we grow with each other. For our board norms, what I would call our focus for tonight would be preparation and participation. We have a lot of complex, and important things to talk about tonight. So I'm going to do my best to stay on topic and keep us all on topic as well. And at the end of the meeting, anybody is welcome to reflect on their participation preparation for tonight. Okay, that would move us into agenda approval. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor, voice vote, aye.
Aye.
I,
Okay, Andy's still not present yet. Agenda is approved. And I'll move on to visitor participation. We do have visitors. Would anybody like to participate at this time on something that is not on the agenda? I believe. Yes. Okay. I will make a note to ask for visitor participation as we go through each item. So, the next is a consent agenda. I'm actually going to ask that we move both of these items out of consent. It's approval of financials and approval of minutes. And since you only need one person to do that, we're going to move on to approval of financials, if that's okay. And the reason I wanted to pull this out of consent is because there is a sample expense report in here.
Yeah, she was
That
gonna go through it in her
I want-
presentation
that you're going to go through in
for
your
feedback. Yep.
in the budget presentation.
I can take it out of the consent, but just because that's where it'll be moving forward, I just wanted to, but I can take it out of.
So whatever you prefer, because she was gonna go over it in the presentation, but if you want to just talk about it now, that either way.
Okay. I don't need to mess up the flow of your presentation, but I just want to understand that this is what you are wanting to submit monthly to us as part of a financial report. Okay, and you will address it in your presentation. Okay, so is there, so what we are approving tonight is not that sample expense report. What we're being asked to approve is the check summary from October. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the check summary from October?
So moved.
Second.
Any visitor participation? Okay. Any discussion from our Zoomers or board? Okay, then voice vote, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I,
Okay, it is approved. Now for the minutes, I had one note and I wanted to make sure that this was it is for the September 27th special meeting. Item 2A was the employee handbook discussion. So my recollection of what occurred was that Andy, Mr. Franklin, moved the question to call the question of the motion. And that was approved. And after the question was called, the actual handbook was voted on for approval. And it was, Carla, you have the notes, but it was a no vote 3-2. And I wanted that to be like accurately reflected in the notes. And I want to make sure that I'm not misremembering because there isn't a video, but this is
No,
from
it's-
Carla's notes and this is from my own recollection.
I trust Carla's notes. My notes were a little sketchy, honestly.
Well,
Like,
it
there
was
a
con-
lot going
it
on.
was- yeah,
So I
it was a
appreciate the
confusing-
correction.
Motion, so
Yeah, so my notes say it was a motion to approve the substance of the student handbook
employee,
with some follow-up revisions to be made by the superintendent.
right?
And that motion failed with 3 no's, which was Andy, Carla, and Danielle, and 2 yeses, which was, wait, I got this wrong.
You got the backwards, yeah.
I have Andy in both for and against. So one of these Andys is
I
Ben.
was against.
Ben and
Well, it's ideal to be on both sides of an issue, but I voted in favor, it was my motion. I don't recall what Ben did, but I know that I voted in favor, and so I was in the minority, I was 2 votes in favor.
Andy
of
called the
approving.
question.
So it
and
would have
Ben
been Andy and
voted.
Karen in favor, Ben, Carla, and Danielle voted against.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, so with that change, is there any other discussion about the minutes that you guys wanted to make? If not, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes with that, with the change we've discussed? Voice vote, aye.
Aye.
Alright,
Great, thank you for that. And now we can move on to strategic planning.
All right, so I'm bringing back the mission, vision, and pillars in the original form as recommended by the committee. At committee of the whole, we did have some discussion around the specificity of them. And there was some conversation around possible adding additional words. After reflection, I decided it's important for the board to think about trusting the process. A committee of 20 staff and caregivers and community members volunteered 12 hours of time to create this end product that I personally think is amazing. Our facilitator explained that a mission is why we exist, and that is a big idea. And then he pushed us to go deeper around the idea that all schools exist for teaching and learning. What makes Glendale-River Hills School District stand out? The other piece was the vision, and that's just our preferred future. And so I find it hard to argue with a preferred future that creates a community that pursues equity and where every person belongs and thrives. So while we may not all agree that these statements are as fabulous as I believe they are, some of us may think they're a 10, some of us may think they're a 5. And while we may not think every word is perfect, I think that this committee has great ownership over the work. And having staff and caregivers feel ownership in the work and have their voice valued is something that I don't think we can underestimate as part of the process. So I know we often say we want more voice and we want collaboration and we want joint decision making, and I feel like this process was exactly that. And it was a good example of that, so my recommendation is that we approve the committee's recommendations as is.
Okay, so the way, I
I'll make
think-
that motion.
what is your motion exactly, Carla?
Motion to approve the mission, vision, and pillars recommended by the strategic planning committee.
Okay, I was contemplating whether we separate them. Oh, no, okay, I like it. Okay, but before we get into board discussion, I am going to invite visitor participation on this topic. Oh, sorry, yeah, woo, okay, Carla's got a first emotion, Carla's motion. Is there a second? I will second it. Okay, so, now, before board enters into discussion, I would like to invite any visitors that are here that want to speak to the mission, vision, or pillars. If anybody would like to do that.
A second. Katie Avalos, 5715 North River Forest Drive in Glendale. I tend to agree with Allison. I was part of the process and all of the wordsmithing and the questions that the board brought up at the committee before, like all of that came. It had all been discussed very thoroughly. The process was extremely thorough. And like, this is what the group landed. And, I mean, you could change a few words here and there. We definitely did a lot of that. And, you know, it was just like a consensus decision. Not everybody agreed. But I think they're pretty decent as is. Like, I would be happy to see them on our website.
Thanks, Katie. For board discussion, I think we could start with a 2-minute, just allowing everybody to say their piece and their comments, suggestions, feedback, and then we can visit if we need to have further discussion, et cetera, et cetera. So if anybody has comments, questions, feedback, Carla or Andy, would you, either of you like to start?
Carla doesn't want to start, she just said that. Let me, if I may, and I
You may.
appreciate it, I mean, we have an existing mission, and then we have an existing vision, right?
Mhm.
And I think that, look, our group did a lot of good. I was very happy to see that we, first of all, had so many people interested in working together to kind of craft what it is that we're trying to say about our district, what our focus should be, and trying to lead us in that direction. Now, I really do think that there was some good start there in terms of what we have on paper, but I look back to our current mission
Mhm.
statement, for example. And our current mission statement says, as part of the greater Glendale-River community, the school district, oh, and by the way, let me just say one thing real quick. These things need to be reworked. You can't have the same thing over time. Okay, they change with the district, they change with the people, they change with the administration, they change with the board. I don't believe keeping things the same for the sake of keeping things the same. The mission statement that we do have talks about keeping, creating a supporting learning environment to inspire all students to strive for, and my computer, of course, literally just froze up. Strive for excellence in pursuing a strong academic foundation to succeed in and contribute to the global community. Now, that's very specific, and frankly, I think it's outdated. But it's very specific, and the most important thing is that it addresses the question of student success. And the mission statement itself, and I said this at the last meeting, the mission statement itself just doesn't focus on students, on student outcome. I mean, it basically talks about success for all. And so I suggested at the time that, you know, even if we have something minimal like success for all students, that would be a step in the right direction. I understand, by the way, Allison's comments about the idea that obviously student success is part of what's assumed in district, but I think for mission, you don't want to assume. You want to state it expressly. You want to be able to use it as something that is kind of a flag for people to see. And
Andy,
so
that's
me, it
2
just
minutes,
feels- the
so,
mission just feels vague. I mean, the vision, and the pillars, I think that these things are better. I don't want to vote these things down. I just, I would like to see, greater specificity in them. Perhaps have the committee go back and, and at least speak it with the voice as to why, they think that what we have is, good enough. And the problem that I have is that I want our mission, I want our vision statement. I want it to be specific. I want it to make a statement. I don't want it to be good enough. I want it to be clear. And I just don't feel it's quite there yet. And so I feel like that there needs to be, a little bit more work there. The pillars, I think are, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Yeah,
maybe there's a little bit tweak
Andy,
there.
we can,
My primary issue is the mission.
I feel like you can't hear.
Andy, can you hear us?
We're at,
Yeah, I can hear you now.
We're-
There was some cutting out there.
yeah, so I'm gonna try to keep everybody to 2 minutes for the first round.
Oh,
And
I'm
I
sorry.
know
Did I
maybe
go
that.
over? Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a little bit.
Didn't hear
It's
that.
okay. Maybe it wasn't enough, but we can circle back. So.
I apologize.
No, you're okay. Carla, do you wanna, are you here and can you hear?
Yes, I'm here. I can say a few things.
If you want, you don't, I mean,
What I would say is that what's happened over the last few months with the strategic planning committee is the work we asked Allison to do last year at the same time, right? We asked her to pursue community engagement, invite collaboration and community voices, so she did that. So thanks for making that happen, Allison. There was a lot of publicity around the formation of this committee. There was a lot of transparency. And so this think work is a win. The participants in the committee included a really good mix: teachers, staff, administrators, community members, caregivers. I was there. I observed broad participation. Strong effort was made to include and hear all the voices. And the content really came from the people who were there. And I would call it like a process of like collecting views, collaborating on those views, reaching consensus on those views. And it was really, it's kind of like an Iowa caucus, right? And there was this broad consensus from the beginning around equity. And there was this sort of unity in the community's thinking about that, this committee's thinking, and I think that reflects our community. So, I think it's easy to wordsmith. I think it's easy to say this isn't good enough. Coming in with a proposal for how you want to improve it is a whole lot better than just saying this isn't good enough. And I don't want to say that to this community of people who came in and did this hard work. And I don't think deference in this context is the same as handing off power or decision making. It's quite the opposite. Deliberate deference here is to honor the hard work and deep thinking of a dedicated group, which engaged in a sound and thoughtful and thorough process. The product they came up with is aligned to the challenges we're seeing in our data, which is basically gaps. And here, where we need to build community empowerment and collaboration, deference is purposeful, deference is wise decision-making. So I champion the concept of accepting this recommendation from this strong committee and intentionally honoring their work. I think these mission, vision, and pillars are strong statements. They speak to what matters in our community, and I think we should adopt them.
Okay, thank you, Carla. Carter, Ben?
Yeah, so I mean, I also appreciate that, we created a committee and people came with ideas. And those ideas are good. So I think that was a good idea. However, I also think that, while gathering information from the community, having them, build something, you can also modify it. And I think as a school, one of the most equitable things you can do is educate kids. And so if you read this out of context, if I weren't in this building right now, you wouldn't know it was about a school. And so, it could be an easy fix where it's empowering growth, connection, and success for students through academic rigor and high effort, something like that. And then the vision could be students who attend Glen Hills or the Glendale-River Hills School District will be empowered to pursue equity and encourage belonging amongst its community or something like that. So, you can take the ideas, and I think the ideas are good and fine, but I do think it needs, I think it needs to mention something about school, academics, students. So I do agree with Andy where I think it does again, not a huge change, but I think it does need work.
You're under time, so maybe, good job. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I appreciated the sharing of the additional materials. It allowed us to have better context for what was considered and how the conversation was generated. I think that having a stronger sense of what a typical vision and mission statement is does help contextualize the final product here. I don't disagree, like success for all students or success for our learning community. I mean, I would support that additional language. I don't think we have to drive it so specific, I'll be honest. I think getting, one of the things that we know now about educational systems is kids who are feeling that they're part of a community, who are encouraged to thrive in a variety of ways, not just academics, are more engaged and better able to learn. And I think it's okay for us to not specifically name each of those things, because what we're saying is we want everybody to find a place of belonging and thrive. That I'm comfortable with. It helped to have context. I still feel like it could get stronger, but I wouldn't negate the purpose of what was done by the people who did it.
Can I share one thing? One of the things I talked to Joe about in between was the idea that, just a little bit to what you said, Ben, anytime these things would be advertised, it would say the Glendale-River Hills School District believes. So you would get some of that language, like to say this is a school district and this is what we believe. So I just wanted to share that
This
we
is
did
our
have that
mission.
conversation. So it wouldn't feel like these would just be standalones.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if I'm introducing myself to a crowd, I would say, here at the Glendale-River Hills School District, we believe in da 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 da, and our vision first is blah 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 blah. So there would be that. So I just wanted to share that piece,
Yeah,
that was part of our conversation.
again,
Can
Would-
I use my
Sorry.
time before you
Well,
respond? We can go back
responded,
around if you want, but
That was
No,
my fault,
she-
sorry. I just wanted you to know
it's
that was
very
a
short.
piece of feedback that was heard.
I'm gonna use my 2 minutes, and then if we want more, we can go.
Okay.
But I just, I wanted to speak to the for all piece actually, because obviously that was discussed in a lot of detail, and I think our focus and our pride in our community is why that for all is there, because we are here for students. They are our, main charge, but we also want to see everyone in our community do all of these things. We want to see our staff, our leaders, our administrators, our community. We want to see people grow and connect and be successful. And if you look at this educational experience as like the success depends on these relationships, then in that statement, to me, that shows that is what sets Glendale apart, our district apart, is our community pride, the longevity of the legacy of people going from students to alum to teachers to, like just the connection people feel to this community is strong. And I think that this mission or this vision is really embodying that. And the last thing I would say is we were all invited to be part of this committee, to have some of do that tinkering, in that space and have our own opinions be heard. But right now, if we are coming from a place of like, this is my opinion about this, that has less weight for me than like, this is what my constituents are telling me about this. This is the feedback I'm getting from our community, from our staff, from our leaders about how they feel about this mission and vision, because we're elected to represent them. So my last piece, I think I'm still under time, would just be that these are just words. And the way that we're going to live up to these words and how we meet them is going to be through our commitments and through the goals. And that is also where the school board is going to have a way to engage with a process again, to make sure that what you're concerned about is, are we focused on students? Are we focused on academic rigor? Are we focused on equity, et cetera? We're going to be able to also engage with the process in that way. So I also agree with Carla and Allison, and I think you guys are saying it as well. I want to embody our values, which is community engagement and collaboration. And that's what this work product in front of us is. So if anybody would like to have another minute.
Okay,
Oh. Oh, do we have the, oh no, I'd like to, a visitor. I think that's okay, and then we can come back to the board, because I,
The box and then we keep an address and stuff on it.
I can.
yeah,
Um, my name is Latasha Housey, 1633 West Bender. My question concern is that as a constituent, the mission and vision is very vague.
okay, well,
Okay,
thank you, Latasha. That is, you are echoing some of the board members' sentiments up here and speaking to my own points.
yeah, and also I have talked to other community members too,
Mhm.
and they also have concerns about it being too vague. So I understand what you're saying, and again, I appreciate the people coming in to do it. But I have talked to other people and they have concerns with the mission and vision as well being too vague. And I can't remember what I was gonna respond with. What were you?
She
what were
was
you gonna
saying
say?
the Glendale-River Hills School District
Oh,
will.
yeah,
will
but again,
preface
I
of vision or
think-
mission.
I think we have to remember that a school, again, the most equitable thing it can do is educate kids. That is a school's job. And to not even mention that in the mission and vision, like, again, maybe I want it to be too specific, I can probably see that argument. But it doesn't even mention education. It doesn't even mention academics. The school's purpose is to drive academic outcomes for students. And it is about the students. They come here every day ready to learn. So, yeah, so I can understand the critique that maybe I want to be too specific, but then I also think the opposite could be said about the mission and vision as it sits right now, where it's too vague.
So we're also being asked to consider the pillars, and I want to make sure that if anybody has some comment on the pillars, that there's a little bit of time for that as well, but I guess, so there is there is a motion to approve everything as is. I guess if there are people who are not comfortable with that, but also don't want to vote it down, I would ask, what do you envision moving forward? Is it like, what would you want us to do here?
I would say you've got something to start with, and I would bring something new back if it were up to me, but it's up to the 5 of us. So that I would suggest not voting on it, having work done on it. And, if we need, that's what I mean, if we need to
No,
have
I was
a
just
community
curious.
session
I'm
or
just
something,
curious.
like, that's what I would do. I think it needs work. And I think it's so important that schools, again, focus on the thing that they're meant to do. Because that's gonna drive equity.
Yeah,
Can I speak?
yeah, please.
Yeah, I don't think we should not vote. I think I think we should just vote up and down. I don't think we should pretend we're adopting these or working from them if there's a plan with a majority of our vote to just rework them. We should vote, and if 3 or more of us say no, then it's a dump and we start over on number 1. I also want to respond to what Ben said about the idea that the most equitable thing a school can do is to teach kids. We already teach kids. We're not succeeding on the equity front. We have massive gaps. It's not working. That's why there's a focus in these mission, vision, and pillars on equity. And so I think that sort of misses the point of where this community spoke. They're saying that academic outcomes aren't the only thing our community cares about. Similar to what Karen's saying, is that we see that it's not just the numbers on paper and the grades and the data points of learning, that it's built on a foundation of belonging, of growth, and of understanding of each other. So I do think there's much more to it than academic outcomes. Those are, of course, important, and those would be embedded down in the pillars in the bread and butter work of the school, right? But I worry that if we focus back on academics in our big statement of what we do, really nothing's changing over what we've done for the last 40 years. And there's no special focus on really the heart of the problem in our school. 60% of our students are people of color who are being left behind, right? That's where the gaps are. So I would ask that we have a vote on this motion. We vote up or down.
Are you calling the question or are you?
Just a
just-
No, but I mean, I can,
Okay,
but
no, I'm curious, before, Ben, before you respond, is anybody else, I was gonna actually
I don't know
ask
if
if
they're-
there's maybe some different perspectives we could entertain, and Andy and Karin, if you wanna participate or jump in.
I guess the only question I have is within the strategic plan and the creation of the mission, vision and pillars, what is the intended amount of time that these would be in place before they would be reconsidered? Or do we reevaluate our work based on these things annually and then potentially make adjustments?
So the idea behind the mission and vision and the reason that they are vague is because they want them to stand the test of time, no matter what we change within our pillars, right? Like, so we could say our new goals are X, Y, and Z, our new strategies for next year are this, but they would still fit under these broader statements of mission and vision. So the pieces the work we haven't done yet is what would change every year potentially, which is the specifics.
This is a 5-year, are we working on?
Yes.
But we're also working
Yeah,
on
so
a
for
5-year
technical purposes,
strategic
yeah.
plan.
So if this were approved, then we would go back to the committee, they would create goals under each pillar. That would come back to the board again.
Mhm.
We would hope for board approval of those. And then the administrative team would work with Joe to create a 1-year plan and a 5-year plan. And then each year that would obviously be adjusted, the year plan, as you move forward
And I guess I would add, I
with
mean,
board approval.
probably at any time, a board member could raise the
Right.
idea of discussing the mission or vision, right, as a future agenda item. So that's not
Right.
off the table, I guess, right?
I would like to offer one thing.
Sure.
I understand, the guidance on making it timeless. I don't know that it should be timeless. I really don't think that the current mission statement ought to stand. I think it needs to be adjusted and grown. I usually keep my P's and carrots separate, but I am on another board and I see how that board has kind of addressed these issues and through board retreats, we've gone through every year to walk through the statement and to ask ourselves if this is, what it is that we want to say. So part of this is, frankly, it's a starting point. Part of it is, frankly, not in some ways the biggest fish in the sea, because I think that there are more important things. Not just saying what we're going to do, but doing it. And so to that extent, I kind of, agree with Carla, but the statement is just too watered down for me. The vision and the mission, it just doesn't speak to us as a district.
Yeah.
And I know we can do better. And I think that the group that came up with this is an amazing group. I think that there were great conversations and, this isn't something that, either one thing or the other. You can have respect for and appreciation for the hard effort and the sensibility that a committee has brought to this topic, but not necessarily agree with the final outcome. And as a board, we have to be the arbiters of, what that is. And we have to, I think the point is to give a lot of deference, where necessary, and I think that, that's what I've tried to do, to listen to the people who spoke, to listen to the work of the group and to respect, what's taking place and to note that board members have been involved with it. But I can't go along with it as is,
Okay,
for mission and vision.
that's,
But you
thank
don't
you.
have a proposal for how to make it better right now?
Well, hold on,
I think part of
You
this is
just
what
think
we
it can
talked.
be.
No,
Can-
I would, I suppose
No,
that
that'd
we
be
talked about
fine.
this a couple of weeks ago or last week at the last meeting, when we went through it. I don't know if it was entirely clear. I thought that some of our suggestions were going to be incorporated into the document. That may have been my misunderstanding on here. I can certainly, come up with, red line in a revision and propose that if someone wants me to take on that,
Well,
mantle, I can do that.
Okay, pause. I don't think we're there yet. The one thing I wanted to do, just because we do have 2 other administrators here who were part of the process, and they
Yeah.
could also offer, I would like to hear just their perspectives if they want to share, and then we can come back to how do we move forward.
Sure. You mind? Okay.
I was a part of the strategic planning committee. It was a lot of hard work and not that should change anybody's opinion. But I do want to bring the idea of like coming to consensus back to the group. And quite frankly, what we came up with wasn't what I wrote down first for a mission or a vision. And it wasn't what Danielle wrote down first. I'm sure it wasn't what Allison wrote down first, but there was a lot of give and take and a lot of working together to come to a consensus on something we could all agree on. And I think that's the first point I want to make is that it probably isn't going to be perfect for anybody, right? But it's the idea of coming to a consensus, finding agreement amongst the group is a very difficult thing to do. And I think that it's something that people worked really hard on that give and take and coming with something that we all felt good about. And I think the other point is that I keep coming back to is that the mission and vision are very broad. And I feel okay with that when I look at the pillars. And I think about where I know, for example, Ben, your mind is going to academics because that is super important to you. But for other people, it's not as important because if their child's behavioral skills or social skills aren't to a point where it needs to be, then sometimes that academic success never comes. And so we talked about that a lot in this group of people about success doesn't always mean academic success. And oftentimes, right, we know that the social skills are just as important for a child to do well in the world and behavioral skills. So all of those things together, social skills, behavioral skills, and academic skills, all of those create citizens that can be productive and participate meaningfully in their community. That's why you're thinking about academic growth, it fits under that pillar, full child growth and success. And we talked about that almost endlessly because they do go hand in hand and they do fall under that pillar together. That's what we're looking at when we talk about kids are those things. I think that's all I have to share or say. It was a lot of work. I get it. I know where your brain is going and I agree with you. And I think because it doesn't say academics, it says full child growth, you're kind of feeling like it's not getting the nod and the attention you feel that it needs to.
Okay, and I just want to be clear, like, I'm not the only one saying this. But yet I'm being picked out as the person advocating for it, and it's fine.
Well, you are
I
advocating,
do.
so is Andy.
I am,
and
yeah,
other
but like
people
all
it's
their
not
community
true.
members are too.
Yeah.
So I just want to make that clear that I'm not the lone man here.
Okay.
But you're the one here talking.
But I am
about it,
talking about it,
representing that
yes.
viewpoint, so that's okay.
So, and again, I appreciate hard work and but sometimes if you work hard at something and the product isn't where it needs to be, you have to redo it. And like, I've worked with kids so much. I've worked with kids that got D's on their tests and I couldn't give them an A. And I worked with them after school and I worked with them during class to try to help them learn the material. But it still wouldn't have been right of me to give them a grade they didn't deserve. And so like, you can apply that in this situation where it's people work really hard and that's great. That's awesome. And I think we can build off of it, but that doesn't mean we should pass it just because we worked hard.
Well, we should pass it if a majority of people think it's a good product.
Sure. Yeah. Again, that's why we're elected on a school board. We vote on it. And if it passes, it passes. But I'm letting you know my opinion on it.
Yeah.
Which I am allowed to do.
Appreciated. Yeah, it's appreciated. I would say perhaps if anybody has like final comments, that there is still a motion, and if there's something we haven't said, I'd love to hear it from people. Yeah, no, and it's okay.
No, I feel awkward, right? I'm wondering if I offered an amendment that said members of our learning community. So it would be all members of our learning community. Would that maintain the spirit without insulting the committee. I mean, I understand what's happening, but I wonder if that draws a little bit brighter a picture for those who feel, I mean, it might not, other people might feel like it still doesn't get specific enough, right?
No, I think we need to give it another month and it needs to work.
So that wouldn't work for him.
No, I would have to think about that. I can't make that decision
And
right now.
I guess my only other thing is that we were all
I appreciate it.
invited.
Sure.
We were all invited to participate on the planning committee.
Again,
So that would have been the time for us to talk about what we think the wording should be. I mean, I get, we can talk about it now too.
we
I know
did it.
that,
No,
but
we talked about during the meeting and that's how we share our views.
I know, I
Again,
understand, yeah,
it's none of, not
right.
anyone's business, but I was visiting my wife, when it was going on. So like,
Sure. And generally, I think we tend to be able to wordsmith
Yeah,
and do things like that as a board.
Yes.
So this feels a little different. I understand. We do have possible, yeah.
My name is Cheryl Miracle. I'm the band teacher at Glen Hills, and I was part of the committee. And just coming from, maybe a little more outside, this is partway through our process.
Mhm.
We have created a mission, we have created a vision, there's pillars, and I think the pillars is where everything's gonna get much more specific and address exactly what you are hitting on, that is coming. And one of the things that was really meaningful to me about the process is keep it simple. There are so many, things that come across our table that just get wordy and flowery of all the great things that are gonna happen. What I appreciate about this is it's direct. It will always come in a total package where we know it's part of Glendale School District. Here's our mission, here's our vision, here are the pillars. And my understanding is that those things are always gonna be connected together. And that's gonna help with, here's the very, streamlined, efficient, not wordy, not flowery. This is what our district is about, but let's break it down with our pillars and see. So what I wonder too, is knowing that there is another step coming up on November 3rd, where this is gonna be fleshed out more. If that might help for those in the community, certainly if they're feeling that it's too vague, knowing that there are gonna be some very specific things coming down the pipe that are gonna help break it down.
Thank you. That's, yeah, I think that I've been trying to say that a little bit as well, and maybe it's hard because it's out of context and you're not seeing that there's gonna be these two specific goals, and there were these 8 commitments we were also highlighting but have not been finalized yet, right?
I
That
know.
speak to a lot of that,
I know
but
how it works. I mean,
okay, it's
I
still
went to,
not,
I
it's still not where you
did my
want it,
master's in
right?
principalship. We did this whole process.
Okay.
I understand the goals, but that, again, that doesn't take away from the fact that if you do a mission and vision, which most schools do, it drives what you do at the school. And again, we talk about community and, a school is part of a community, and that's a really important aspect. But, a grocery store is part of the community too, and guess what they focus on? Food, right? The school is part of the community, and guess what it focuses on? Educating kids. So I do think, again, it needs to incorporate students, it needs to incorporate education, academics, or something of that sort.
Okay, I feel like
Danielle, can I speak?
is it something new? Are we adding something new to the conversation?
I just wanted to respond to something Karen said.
Sure,
It's very quick.
okay,
I would say that I would entertain a friendly motion if you want to make it, Karen, to change the word all to our learning community. I think that's what you were proposing, right?
Yes.
What you were thinking about?
but I think, okay, but well, just to that. Okay, on the amendment.
I don't know. Karen said that it was the first, really
mean-
concrete, like very specific edit I had heard
Right.
to this.
But Ben said that
I
it
don't know what you're
wasn't,
thinking.
it wasn't.
You guys can vote on whatever. So,
Hold on, I'm looking at my Roberts rules, because if it's a friendly amendment.
There is no such, I would propose an amendment, and it would be friendly if Robert's rules allowed it to be, but it doesn't. So.
It doesn't allow that? Okay.
I think it allows it just to be an amendment, right?
And I think we'd have to vote on that, on an amendment.
Yes.
That's what we would have to do.
Okay.
So I. But I mean, honestly, I'm not hearing that it's gonna. Make
can
a
find
huge
out.
difference. Okay, so you're gonna make a
So I'm
motion,
making a motion to have an amendment
okay,
to clarify the language all to members, all members of our learning community. Which should be inclusive of children, staff. I mean, that should be,
mhm.
right,
Mm.
it's the whole family.
So you're making a motion to alter the wording of the motion, which is to approve the mission, vision, and pillars. Your amendment is to approve the mission, vision, and pillars, but change the mission statement to.
To read,
Mhm.
oh my God, I have to find it.
Instead of for
Empowering
all,
growth, connection, and success for.
All members of our learning community.
all members of our learning community. Okay,
Do you
So-
feel like that encompasses families and community members?
well,
I'm just asking, because I know
To
that
me, it
was the
does.
point of all.
I mean, I
Okay.
think,
To me, it does.
right, like
Okay.
it's, everyone who touches the school community is part of our community, right?
mhm. Okay, so you need a second. Is there one?
Second.
All right, we're gonna do a roll call vote on the
On the amendment,
on this, on the amendment.
not the mission. and
Whether we're
vision.
accepting the amendment
Got
to
it.
the motion. Yes, Carla? Did she raise her hand?
Did you raise your hand?
There's a
Oh.
flag.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, Danielle Bailey votes no on the amendment. Ben,
And this is just for the amendment.
just
not
for the amendment, then
Aye.
we get to the motion. Arn,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
Andy?
No,
Okay. The amendment, so the motion is now. To approve the vision, the pillars, and the mission that reads. Empowering growth, connection, and success for all members of our learning community. And if nobody's opposed,
Oh.
what?
Sorry, I miscounted. Passed.
It passed. Ben, Karen, Carla voted yes for the amendment. Andy and I voted no. And now if there isn't any objection, I don't want to have to call the question, but I think we could vote on the motion.
Second.
It already, doesn't it
Oh.
already have a
Yes,
second? It
yeah.
should, okay. Good, okay, so then I'm gonna do a roll call vote again. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, okay, we're gonna do roll call vote again. I'm not gonna say the whole thing, because you've got it, right?
Yep.
The motion. Does everybody understand the motion, though? Maybe I should
Mhm.
say it. The vision as is, the pillars as is, the mission that reads, ends with success for all members of our learning community. Okay. Karen Cronwell,
Yes.
Ben Wynn,
No,
Carla,
Yes.
Andy,
no,
ooh. I don't know what to do.
I know.
I'm sorry. I'm struggling, because if I vote no. And it comes back the same, then it goes back if I vote yes. I'm not really voting my heart, but it moves forward.
Am I allowed to give you feedback?
Sure, you wanna give me feedback?
So while I'm disappointed, and my concern is what Karen said, that there's the potential that committee members will feel like. Why join a committee and do a bunch of work if it's just gonna be changed? I would rather bring approved mission, vision, and pillars and be able to continue to do the work. On November 3rd and go to the next level. I think it may be even more disappointing to
What if-
not be able to.
What
move
if I,
forward with
what if
those
this, what
pieces.
if this vote fails, but we look at the mission, vision, and pillars separately? And we could approve them, and then it's just the mission that
my thinking would be if we go back and redo a mission, I don't think we're gonna bring it back to.
We're
the
not gonna
board and
bring something
everybody's
back
gonna like
different, I
what we have the
I'm so
next time
sorry, I'm
around, so it's
sorry.
gonna, I feel like the same thing will happen.
Okay.
So this is at least the spirit of the majority of what people.
What happens if I
agreed upon.
abstain?
It fails. If you abstain, it fails.
Oh, thank
You
you.
don't have a
Okay,
majority.
okay,
I
okay.
think we can work with it.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just having an anxiety attack in public right now. It's fine. It's good. I'll
I'm trying to
I'll
hold
vote
mine
yes.
together,
I'll vote yes.
Danielle.
I'll vote yes.
Good, cause we can't both lose it at the same time.
No, I'm not gonna, I just
No,
feel,
it's
I
just-
just, I'm sorry, I should have voted, I don't know. It's okay. All right, okay.
We'll make it work.
Mission, vision,
make it-
pillars have been approved. Thank you, everybody, for your perspectives and collaboration. And
We'll make it work.
we will move on. And thank you to the committee members who are
Thank you
here
so
for
much for
helping
coming.
us with all of that too. I appreciate that. Okay. Moving on to priority policy second readings. Allison, take it away.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do is, does everybody have like a tech device where they can be in board docs?
Yes.
Because we have a lot of policy work to do, so I thought it might be good to take 30 seconds to make sure everybody can see what they need to see. Otherwise, I need to remedy that before we bring another whole set of policies forward. So what you should be able to hopefully see is if you are on board docs and you're logged in,
Mhm,
if you go on the right side to policies and you
mhm.
see the drop down for drafts,
Yes.
and then you go to the left side and you see where it says books. And I will make sure we label the books much more specifically moving forward as well. So that is a change that I will make. I'll put dates and things. But the book that we're working in right now is Policy Manual First Draft Clean,
Yes.
because those were the ones I brought for a first reading. So that's where I made my edits from the first reading. And so I'm hoping you can see the edits, and a good example to look at would be wellness. It's third from the bottom, I believe.
So operations, it is PO 8510.
And hopefully you can see the edits.
Oh boy, like, is there gonna
Are
be
you
green
logged
or
in?
red? Oh, that's always a good question because I'm technologically challenged.
Cause you saw it earlier today, right?
I did, but will I see
Ben, are
it
you able
now?
to see the edits?
They're not highlighted now.
Are
And
you logged in?
Are we in, I'm sorry, I had to re-log in because I had
Mhm,
timed out.
okay,
So
mhm.
what book are we supposed to be in?
First,
Policies,
first,
then
Draft.
policy
Policy
manual.
manual first draft.
yes.
yeah, I don't see the edits.
I'm not seeing high.
There are no edits in mine. It's still the original language, including the phrases about obesity.
I can't tell if I'm logged in.
And you're under drafts, Carla?
First draft clean.
I
Yes,
mean, on the right side policies, drafts.
yes.
What do you mean?
We don't have,
Oh, it's missing. Look at that.
I have retired Wisconsin policy local update
Okay.
and Neola help. I
So
don't,
I need
It's
to get you
there,
guys drafts,
Draft.
because then you'll be able to see
Oh.
all the work.
I have working drafts.
No,
It's
so
the
that's a glitch that I have to work with Steve on. So
So
if you're
here,
under drafts. you should be
Active
able to-
draft retired. You don't have that? Sorry, bear with us, people who are here.
Oh,
Draft, and then if you go over policy priorities, August
Um,
2023.
I have what looks like two blank.
I wonder if it's. glitching.
It does that, but but you
Okay,
can
now
actually
I
click
see
on
it.
it. You can still
Now I
click on
see
it.
it. If
even
I
though
go to
it's
the
blank.
right
Yeah.
side
Like,
drop
The
down
invisible,
menu
the invisible
instead of the
box.
left side.
Yep, so first you have to be in drafts because you're
then-
seeing them, all the work behind the scenes.
So Allison, when it's just a
Watch
blank
myself.
white
I
space,
don't know
how
what
do
it's
I know?
doing.
Like, how would I know what to touch for draft?
Where's drafts? Can you see it?
I can now, but so sometimes you can't and it's invisible. So see, it's right here, but it's
Oh my
invisible.
goodness.
Huh?
But
Is
you can
it-
touch it. You can
That
still
is
touch
so
I
it.
weird,
just don't know
but
where
she
to
needs to know
touch.
which one it is.
It's right above retired. Touch
Okay.
right above retired. The blank space.
I was like, you need to know which one.
It showed up for me one time.
Okay.
Okay. But
So
okay,
I
so
will
we've,
ask
we've,
about the glitch of it.
we figured
showing
it
up
out. Okay,
Blank, so,
great.
okay.
Now,
I am
Right.
satisfied now. I have located it.
thank
I'll work
you.
on the blank thing though. I don't know what's going on there.
Okay,
Okay, so there are 4 policies that we're looking at based on feedback from the first reading. So the first one, are you guys still in wellness? So we could go to wellness first. It's 8501. I
Mhm.
believe it's third from the bottom.
Mhm.
Oh, before we dig into wellness, so he is going to, he combed for gender neutral language. He also is going to change parent to parent and guardian simply because there's some legal terminology around parent, so it has to be
Or
included
guardian.
because it's got a specific,
Yeah.
meaning, but I did give him that feedback, so I just wanted you to know. And then there's one policy, it's a Title I policy where it says like parent engagement, and that's part of state statute too, so we left that one alone. So wellness policy, there was some feedback around the word obesity. I had done some research looking for different terminology, and then based on some feedback from Carla, and then also Danielle, we were able to talk with Steve about just eliminating the end of the sentence. Because I think it's pretty clear that if we're talking about improving student health or children's health, that we don't need
One
that
specific
and, right, one specific
potential,
condition,
not
right?
even, yeah.
So in preamble, A and C, that's eliminated.
Mhm.
And then on page 5, there's an additional strategies and it says furthermore, and it's eliminated there as well.
Mhm.
So those are the only changes to wellness from first reading.
And then the feedback from DPI was we could actually change it. If we felt, we still felt
Yes, the
compelled
title.
to actual saying physical activity and nutrition, it would still meet the DPI standard.
Yes, and I just wanted your feedback on whether or not that would tell people like. And maybe we switch it, physical activity and nutrition, and in parentheses, put wellness. I'm just wondering, unless you think that that just says what the policy is.
I like wellness because what follows this policy is like convening of community to talk about what wellness looks like in our district, and that gives them some leeway to include things around mental health or like other, I don't know.
So we can
other
always review the
things.
policy. And
So I
add.
feel like that might be more in line with where our district would want to go with this policy anyway, in my mind, but so I'm okay with wellness, but I'm open. Carla or Andy or Ben, any other thoughts on?
I don't know if Andy's.
I don't care.
No,
We're good.
That's a clue, just
I mean, I
talking,
care.
Carla. You
I
just,
care. I'm being a little obnoxious. I care, but it's not. Like, physical activity and nutrition, I think it's specific enough, and I know the reason for adding wellness is because it grows out of federal statutes and regulations that talk about wellness, so. I get it. It'll make it easier to find if there's an audit and someone is like, do you have a wellness policy?
Yeah.
Keep that word in the title will help.
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Are we good on that one or?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, the next one, so it was really the bullying policy, but then the same definition was in anti-harassment. So I just wanted to address that because it was discussed. So, there was some feedback to take a look at DPI's bullying policy. And when I went to DPI, they actually had a model bullying policy, and I included the definition in there just so you can see it. And it's clear that Neola took that definition from the DPI model
Mhm.
and actually just added a few more specific pieces. So I'm comfortable with that definition in both of those policies, if the board is comfortable with it, knowing it's the DPI model policy definition.
Any objections? Okay,
No, thanks for doing that follow-up work, Allison.
okay, that just leaves open
Yep,
enrollment.
and then the last one is open enrollment. So we started this whole conversation because we were like, is it guarantee, is it preference? And we were creating the situation that started this conversation was that the tuition waivers that were guaranteed open enrollment the next year.
Mhm.
So we had tried to change the language in that beginning part. But when I talked to Steve, the issue is that preference is referenced later in the policy. And so we couldn't use it there. And so then the question he had was, do you guarantee open enrollment for current open enrollment students? And I said, yes, because if you're open enrolled, you don't have to reapply the next year if you are accepted under open enrollment.
Okay.
So he said, so you want to leave the word guarantee there because that's what you do. If you're working from the idea that you don't want to have to guarantee tuition waiver, he just added that additional language. So instead of changing it in the top, he added the part that says if you're on tuition waiver. And because that means you've moved, you were a resident that moved, you stayed on tuition waiver, that you now have to apply through the regular open enrollment process. You're not just guaranteed a seat.
Well, okay. I'm trying to read, so
Mhm.
all currently attending open enrolled students, so these are tuition waiver students who are currently attending open enroll, like, are they currently
So
open
it's
and
two different categories,
simultaneously?
but it's
Okay.
under the open enrollment process, that they get a tuition waiver.
So they
we
couldn't
wanted to
say,
be really
I am currently
clear,
open
right,
enrolled, I'm guaranteed.
because we're specifying it.
Okay,
And then, I'm sorry,
sorry, just one more, but the all siblings of currently attending open
We do
enrolled,
that.
we are going to
Mhm.
guarantee,
So
even
I-
if there isn't a space designated in that
Yep,
class.
we guarantee siblings.
So that was my question, and
Can I
I know,
ask a question and I
Oh,
accept
God.
the wait? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's okay, yeah, Karn and then you, Andy.
so I did have a question about that, because one of the concerns we've had is that our open enrollment was quite robust and actually has shifted what our staffing needs are
Mhm.
for students who don't reside in our district and don't participate in the tax base. I've benefited from open enrollment. I don't want to sound heartless, but is there a point at which guaranteeing sibling seats does shift our staffing needs? Because I think we need to be cautious about that.
I think it's from what I've heard, the history is tuition waivers. Because people would come, they would move, and they were guaranteed for the rest of their, I mean, you could come in 5K, move 2 months into the school year, and then you were guaranteed. So from what I've heard with students with IEPs and with other students, cost was basically keeping those tuition waivers, but it's obviously something we could review. Like, if we get to a space where we see that that's a tipping point, we can review the policy. But I was told those tuition waivers were
Could I
the
just-
biggest issue.
Could I, Lindsay, do you
Mhm.
have insight into this without having had any notice at all? I mean, I'm sorry.
Because typically it's been
I'm thinking-
paraprofessionals or special ed staffing, that's been the
Is
big.
Kayla coming to?
Do we need a motion?
Oh,
Well, Allison was
Before we do that,
presenting.
can I just
the-
ask? Oh, sorry.
No.
I just, it's a point of order, and I
Yeah.
just want to ask a
We might
question
need
if
a
I can, and it goes to procedure. But it's the same concern that I had last time that we, had the meeting. And, I just want to make sure that the public was able to identify these 27 policies through public notice and that they had access
mhm.
to understanding what those public policies,
Mhm.
those 27 policies are.
Yeah,
You know,
based,
that they were available for a public person on
Yeah.
board docs.
so
Because
based
they
on,
aren't on the,
based on your feedback from last time, I did put the document that lists all the policies, including what the changes are to these 4, as a public document
Mhm.
in board
okay,
docs.
and but on the public agenda, I mean, it still looks like it doesn't reference that, so you still have to go online to be able to see that, and I hope moving forward that we identify the policies with specificity and that they're in the printout, of the agenda, because I really think that we need to identify the
If you did a
policies.
detailed agenda right
Even if we don't list all of it, at least have a heading. I think it would be so much more helpful for someone who's just looking at that agenda. I want to make it easy for them.
Yeah, it's something to look into, because I think what you're asking for is the entire board packet to be posted. And I don't think that's
No,
ever been
but
what we've
yeah.
done.
Okay.
I just worry that, because I was just taking a look here. And if you try to print the agenda, I mean, just heading, doesn't even say what.
The
they were.
detailed
Right.
agenda, however, has a link to it. A PDF.
There's no link to it this time around, it just says it's
Yeah.
in board docs, so I
And
mean, I think
no
there's a
notes.
notification there. But
Yeah,
I would
so
just
put
like
it as
it
a
to be
public.
different next time around,
Okay.
that's all.
So Andy, if you look at the detailed agenda, is that what you're looking for? Because that has the links.
It has a PDF
Well,
and the
if I look at,
detail.
yeah,
Well, I'll check with you,
I-
Andy,
I-
when we how about
Okay.
I'll check in with you for the next round of policies
Yeah.
to see if we're on
Cause
the
I
same
made sure it
page.
was public, cause I did hear your feedback last time.
okay, then that's great, I do see the detailed. Or I see the minutes, I don't see something where there's a link within the agenda, so
Okay,
I'm not sure what it is.
and another point of order is we probably should have a motion. I guess I felt like you were presenting the
Yeah,
thing and then
I
we just
was.
got into
Yeah.
it. So
Yep.
is there a motion to approve the priority policy second readings? It is 27 policies and we can list them in the minutes, the titles. Okay, okay.
moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, now we can, are there any visitors here who would like to speak about any of these policies? Okay, thanks for the nods, the shaking of the head. Okay, back to board discussion, open enrollment. Yes, let's talk.
I just.
Karen wanted to just,
So I think the thing to consider financially with open enrollment is that we do get funding from the state for every child that enrolled in, as well as any child that open enrolled out. The piece to remember, which I think Alvin kind of touched on, is that when you have all siblings, you have one student that is accepted under open enrollment. They may just fall under the normal general education,
Right.
Not need any additional needs. A sibling might come in, and if they are also in open enrollment, they might need additional services, which are going to be above and beyond what we receive for open enrollment. So I think those are the different things to consider when we are having open enrollment, because the expense of the additional paraprofessional, if there's alternate off-site location, transportation, all these different pieces, those are all additional costs that as a district we think on when we.
So it's ultimately a board decision if you want to guarantee siblings or not.
I would move to change it to preference.
We do that.
Let's see, I'm just gonna.
Let's
look
just
at it.
pull it out.
What we would do,
Let's just pull it out. And we can go on that.
I think we just have to uncheck siblings.
That was part of the template
I'll make a motion
Yeah.
to pull out
from the,
open enrollment from the,
Consideration.
yeah.
well, she just made a motion.
Oh,
to-
I'll second
so-
her motion then.
Well, her motion was to change the language.
Oh,
Do you want to just withdraw your motion? and
sure,
go
I'll
with-
withdraw my motion.
Sorry, not you.
Oh,
Karen,
her.
do you want to withdraw your motion and go with the, let's pull it out so we
Sure.
can talk
Just
about it
make sure we do it
separately?
correctly. Yep.
Okay, so I haven't heard any objection. We're still gonna talk about it. But right now, we're gonna vote on the motion because I haven't heard any other discussion around the other 26 policies. Is that correct?
Yes.
So all in favor of approving the policy second readings, the 26 of them, we will discuss open enrollment subsequently. Voice vote, all in favor? Aye, any objections? None? Okay, now let's just get back to open enrollment in general, and you want to change the language. Is there any other support for changing that language? Is anyone else in this?
So
I-
basically what this section is saying is that in January, when you determine space, you're including all currently open enrolled and siblings
Right.
in that space determination.
Mhm. I personally I think that I'm okay with it as is, as long as it's something we continue to monitor, and like, I would love to understand the budgetary impact, and I bet Kayla could, right? Oh, do you want to do something to talk? Please,
Okay.
we're discussing.
I may or may not be able to answer all the questions, but like if you're looking for, I can't pull up if somebody was open enrolled because their sibling was open enrolled, but
Mhm.
I can tell you that, if a student is automatically open enrolled, then we are obligated to provide. They are then our student and we provide for them what they need, no matter what. And so that could mean contracting out from an agency in order to provide a service that we don't currently have, so.
Aren't we able to deny open enrollment if we do not have the resources to meet a
If it
student's
says
need?
guaranteed for all siblings, then.
Then you
it's not
can't make
guaranteed.
that determination.
Right.
So
Which is what Karen's.
what is
I think
what
that's
would
what
the
Karen-
administrative recommendation be then on this? Cause I mean, that's,
It is
But I'm
preference, I
curious.
just have to figure out where, maybe I need to go back to Steve, because when I wanted to just change this top line to preference. He was saying that because this is space determinations, that that's not the place for it and that preference is defined down here, so I just wanna make sure. We
Sure.
get the
Should we-
language right, like you said.
I would move to table this.
Okay,
Yeah.
what was the last one?
Cause
Hold
it's
on.
an, I think
Okay,
it's a
right.
pretty easy thing for me to ask him. to
Okay.
Get the language
Because
right.
if that's like the administrative recommendation, I mean, I would,
And I just went on
For
best
it.
practice.
Yeah.
And what
100%.
Kayla
Yeah.
said is that we guarantee siblings, and a
Right.
lot of districts guarantee siblings, but it
Yeah.
would be interesting to dig into that a little bit more.
And I think my caveat is that if we guarantee for anybody, then I can't give you a prediction because you don't know.
Right.
You don't know what's going to
Happen.
Mhm.
what's gonna roll in and then you just,
Yeah.
my responsibility is to provide and ensure they're
Mhm.
getting what they need.
Yeah.
No matter what
Yeah.
that, no matter what
right,
the financial
I
impact is, that's my job.
It would also, it would be good to get clarity, Carla, on if a student is open enrolled. And again, this is gonna sound super heartless, and you guys, I'm a nice human being. But, if a student is open enrolled and they have some kind of situation happen during their enrollment that causes them to have needs that rise significantly above that which our district offers, but perhaps our home district has, then do we have the capacity to change our guaranteed placement because of the need?
that was.
I'm not sure,
previous-
but we've definitely talked about that.
It is, that's in our current policy.
I mean, we can do it on the front, like we've done in January, we say we're not accepting any students with IEPs, but I don't know if once they're here, if we can.
If an IEP is,
Once
comes
they're
up
here-
after,
Resources.
no, if it comes up after, then
Yeah.
I think there can be reconsideration under our current policy, but it would be good to compare our
Mhm.
current policy to what
Mhm.
we're approving.
I just wanna make sure we're
Is that
very
right?
clear on what.
Yeah, no, that's.
You don't-
another
I
thing
might
to
be
look
wrong.
into. I don't think, yeah.
So, okay, I think there's a motion to table. Is there a second?
Second, hey, real quick to Andy's point though, when you click on the PDF, it gives you the summary. Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
are people able to look at drafts too, or is that just us?
they can see the first draft clean without all of this.
Oh, that is a
So
problem.
they-
Okay,
No, they'd
there's
be
a document
inactive.
that-
they would only be
see-
inactive.
They would see
So they
the
don't,
proposed language without what's
Right.
been changed.
they just wouldn't be able to see the lines, but they see the new language.
Oh, but they can't see they see the new.
They don't see
language, but they
Allison's
don't see-
edits. They would see what we are approving right now. What
The
the
other-
board's gonna be asked to approve. is what
But the
they
other
see.
piece, Brian, is I did include a document that's public view that summarizes what the changes are.
Yeah. But it says you're putting a state statute in.
Hmm?
For open enrollment, you're putting in,
Language requirements based on.
so
state
like
statute
what I
law.
see, this is 5113,
Mm.
right? So like, but if you go into the public facing active view,
Mhm.
you don't see the changes you made.
Right, you just see the language of the policy. will be-
No. I'm in active right now and you don't see the change you made there, right? Or
But even
maybe-
drafts.
Well,
I can
that-
look into it.
Guaranteed, it's
I can look
guaranteed.
into that.
Yeah,
But
but
where's
we're
that-
gonna table this.
But where's
yeah.
that state statute you put in? I don't think this is the,
No, I said it was based on a state statute.
based on it.
I
well,
can
but
look
in the
into
draft, you
it.
put the state statute in there, right?
No,
It's just based on
Yeah.
what she kept in was based on the state statute. She's giving us notes on her conversation with Steve.
Wait. Okay.
There's a second, so voice vote, all in favor to table this, let Allison do some research and come back with an administrative recommendation.
and I'll look into that too, Ben.
Okay.
You-
Aye,
Aye, all in
Aye.
favor, aye,
aye.
any opposed? Okay, it's tabled, thank you, we got through that. We are moving on to the budget, it is 7:50. How much time have you allotted for how much time are you foreseeing for this? For your presentation?
Maybe less.
Okay, so one thing I wanna, before we get into this budget presentation, I would like to ask you, Lindsay, to be open to us having questions during your presentation.
I
However,
won't read my. speech.
no, well, no, I wanna keep us on topic. I wanna make sure that whatever slide we're on, whatever topic we're on, everybody is able to have clarity and understanding of that topic. If we veer off and that's coming later, we can park it, we can come back to it, but I just think like it's important that this is a dialogue and that we but I will try to keep us all on
No,
track.
we included slides for questions
Oh,
because there
okay.
might be 3 or 4 slides that kind of all go together and then a
Okay,
stop.
okay.
But see how you feel.
But let's
See
just,
how you
I just
feel.
I want you to be
See
open
how it
so that
rolls.
we can see how it goes with this.
All right,
And
Andy and Carla, I'm going to share the presentation that we just made.
is that terrible?
So I'm gonna turn off my video and share the presentations.
Would anybody be opposed to like a 2-minute break to get into this, or a 3-minute break? I just need to like, is that can we, I would move to just take like a 3-minute break if you wanna get some water, go to the bathrooms, or second?
Second.
All in favor, voice vote?
I,
Aye,
Aye.
okay, thank you.
Right.
You guys get your presentation ready.
Sorry,
I just.
typically the audience is here for like the last.
I just need to move.
Probably make sure my kids are alive and fed. Shoot, I was supposed to order food. I always do this.
So I need a 16-year-old that orders for the 13-year-old. It's very helpful.
Oh, my house is the other way, it's the 13-year-old that makes sure the 17-year-old.
Sometimes that is the more responsible party.
Yeah.
He's got the DoorDash account.
Just real quick. So this is the drafts, where I'm in draft mode, and you've put number 4 in here with that, but then here's, I'm assuming what the public sees in active, and your edits aren't there.
Right, I have to ask him about that. I don't know if we
Okay.
have to show the edits because we're talking about them in the meeting. Or
Oh.
not, so I'll double check.
Okay,
Because then there's just what he has to do is he has to take those drafts and just make them active.
okay,
So that the public can see them. So it's an easy fix.
Yeah.
I just gotta ask him about it. Cause I don't know what they usually do.
I don't know.
But- And that's what we did last time, is all the ones that I brought to you guys for first reading, we made them active,
yeah,
so everybody could see them.
right, on
So-
PDF form.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll check into it. I wrote it down as a note to ask them. What's the first slide? Okay.
Okay,
My computer is sure.
so. Can everybody online see what we're seeing? Can Carla and Andy see?
I hope so.
I see the presentation.
Okay, yeah,
I see
Okay.
page, yeah.
look at how far behind that is.
Oh, wow.
I'm literally like already got it set up. I know.
Well, you could plug in with the HDMI.
Okay.
And then I have to sit over it. Okay, as long as you guys can see it, we're good.
All right, so, I wanted to start by saying, when I started putting the presentation together, I realized that I have not had an opportunity to really talk about our finances since February. Because in June, Allison presented the preliminary budget because I was out with my surgery.
Yeah.
So, it's been some time. So I know a lot of information is in this presentation tonight. So I wanted to just note that I put some thought in the presentation for some questions.
Thank you.
You guys can ask those. I would just say, please keep in mind that I'm building, so like the first section will build up to the next section, which will build up to the third section. But please feel free to ask questions. And then also I am always available to meet, afterwards to discuss stuff in detail. So again, like I said, you know, I really haven't had an opportunity to talk with everybody since February, so.
Yes.
oh,
And to that point, the last time when we did approve the preliminary budget, it was projecting a slight surplus. Is one thing. The other thing is that we had this like timeline where it was like August, there was an annual meeting, which we know is not required for us, but last year we did have this sort of like budget hearing where we had a preview. And then we are also talking about having the budget be uploaded into Skyward with the breakdown of budget reports for September. So I don't think either of those things occurred this year. And so I do know we had a lot of questions, and I think that that is the reason why. So if we could firm up this process like in our board calendar and anticipate that those things, you know, that we will be getting updates. I think it will help too, that we will be changing the financial report that we get monthly. So we should be in tune with the budget every month, but I want to preface that it may feel like the board has questions tonight, but like you said, and are noting that we haven't talked about this since February and then June. And things have seemed to have changed drastically since then, so.
So, and ironically, my first slide, I believe, is the one that you're mentioning from February,
this screen, sorry. That just talked about the projection.
Do we have it?
Probably can't show the email right now.
Sorry, it's on this one then.
Oh, okay, okay.
I don't know.
I don't even know if they're actually up there.
It's not me.
Wait, oh, you got. the
Is this from like
presentation?
ours?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's Lindsay's computer.
Oh, okay.
Oh, is this your computer?
Mine's over there.
Just turn it off.
Yours.
There it is.
Okay.
But then if I turn it off, then they're not gonna be back here.
Well, we're looking at this one, right?
You
Can
know
we
what I'm
just look
saying?
at them? Let's
Okay.
look, great.
Okay,
So we'll look at that.
so I'm like, you got people.
Oh.
over there.
Okay,
So we'll have to find it.
can we not look at Carla and Andy there?
Well, they're not on
Just-
there anyways, they're on this.
Okay, okay. Great.
Do you want that screen? to look at?
We have the presentation, so it's okay. I can look at it here.
Okay, so, in February, we had a conversation with the projection showing.
Oh, Andy, I should speak up. Do you wanna switch with me? Okay, Andy, we're gonna switch so that Lindsay's closer to the
Oh
microphone.
my God, that is really hard to read.
You can enlarge it on, can you enlarge
Yeah.
your screen?
I don't know.
Go like
Yeah,
this.
I'm sure
Spread your fingers apart.
I don't have, oh, I can do that?
Yes.
There
Otherwise,
we
it's
go.
Control plus.
Okay. Ah. Technologically challenged.
Good.
Yeah, okay.
Andy, I'm hoping you can hear me better. So this slide is one from the presentation in February where it was projection of what we would be looking like. And to what Danielle said, is it looks like we would end up having a surplus. So part of what I'll talk about tonight is why we didn't end up with a surplus because of the other factors that were not necessarily in the district control.
Mhm.
So I'll go through those pieces
Okay.
as well. The first part that I wanted to talk about was salaries and benefits, because that is predominantly the largest portion of our budget. We did have about a 15% increase in salaries and benefits. So salaries, I wanted to give the breakdown of what's making up that 15%. So there was the market value adjustment that we did for our staff when we were reviewing the salary compensation. And then the normal CPI increases that were approved. And then the new positions that were approved for our SST coaches, which included school psychologists and guidance counselors. And that was based off of the feedback that we received from teachers, families, and just the needs in our building to add the additional support for SST. And then the administrator portion, that was a combination of adding the director of student services and special ed, as well as the administrative CPI, and then the last portion of that was support staff raises.
Question.
Okay.
So didn't we, when we pre-approved the budget in June, which of these were not part of the consideration? We'd already done market value, CPI, support staff raises, hired Kelly.
So what you approved in June is for this upcoming year, 23-24. I'm just talking about where we landed at the end of 22-23.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was, okay, all right.
So your base here is last year's bucket used on salaries,
Mhm.
and then the numerator is the bucket of salaries minus last year's salaries.
Mhm.
So
Well,
like,
wait, say that again, I'm sorry. I wanna make
so
sure.
the denominator is gonna be last year, the bucket of the amount of money that went into all salaries from last year.
Mhm.
Compared to the bucket of this year's salaries.
Yes, I mean, I guess the
So-
only thing that I would say is that we didn't add any FTEs this
Yeah.
year, but we had changes,
That's
obviously, in salaries with retirements and different things that happened, so.
So that part's what, cause I thought you said there were new hires.
Not this year.
In 22-23. So
Yeah.
all of these numbers, these increases were for the 22-23 school year.
Compared to the 21-22 school year, okay. Cause what, I guess when you say 15% increase in salaries, that it kind of makes it sound like we gave everyone a 15% raise,
Sure.
and that's not true. Because 600,000 of it is from new positions. Which is a significant chunk of that.
Mhm.
So I just, okay, that's fine, it would be nice if we took that out and then talked about, okay, so we had, this average of increase, because the highest increase we gave was 8% to support staff, and we gave teachers the 5%.
For the 23.
Yeah.
This year,
So-
last year was different.
So anyway, I just think.
So
When we
last
say
year-
it's a 15% increase in salaries, I don't know.
So I think to help clarify that is like moving forward, now that we're done doing the market value adjustments for the certified, like because that was such a range of percentages, because it depended on where people were at. Now moving forward in the spring, when we come to the board and ask for CPI increases, ideally, it would just be a flat percentage for everybody. And so then next, like when you use the information next year, it would be 4% increase, because everybody's getting a 4%, and it's based off of that baseline bucket of the salary.
And I guess, the only reason I bring it up is because when I was reading this, it said, hey, we need to, with the budget, we have to look at, teacher increases for next year. And when you say it's a 15% increase in salaries, I don't know, I just don't think that's totally accurate. It's accurate in the sense if you're looking at the pool of money that goes into salaries, but it's not accurate in the sense of the raises people got from last year to this year. So it's not,
No, it's good.
I don't want to
Nope.
sound mad, or I'm just saying, I think the 15% ratio, I think that's.
Sure.
It would be nice if we could separate the new position salaries from that analysis.
No, I appreciate the feedback. And so with the increase in the salaries, I think it's also important to just talk about the staffing changes that we had from 21-22 to 22-23. So we went from 9 administrators to 8, and certified staff went from 86 to 99 staff members, and then support staff went from 54 to 63. And so in that is, like I mentioned, the coaches, SE teachers, guidance counselors, school psychologists, paraprofessionals that were hired to help with the caseload needs that we had.
Is that written down somewhere?
It's in the exec summary.
Like what you sent me today?
No, it's in.
No, what you sent me today, is that?
Yeah, so, the breakdown,
Yeah.
I put it in the comment section of it.
Oh.
What so 21-22 to 22-23.
Deleted it.
So we,
9 to 8.
21-22 did not, building and grounds left halfway, and we did not have a director of student services and special ed formally, like it was a shared.
And we went
position.
to 22-23.
And then we
So
hired.
now
Kelsey,
this year we
but
went
we
back
never
to,
fully hired the.
but we're back to 9.
No, because I do building and ground too.
Oh, okay, thanks.
See your water Okay, as for benefits, we stayed relatively stable. We had a slight increase with health insurance, which is expected to be fluctuating based on staffing. If people take the insurance, if they take single, if they take family, if they take cash in lieu. But we did not have an increase in our health insurance rate. So we were able to maintain the premium for our staff and still continue to offer the HRA for $2,000 for a single and $4,000 for a family. The next piece was transportation. So with transportation, there's always going to be an increase just because the cost of fuel has gone up. We are able to share some of our costs with the NHEC consortium agreement. So that's with Nicolay, Foxland Bayside, and Mapledale. That is a contract that is coming up. So we will start the conversations about next steps of what we'll do to move forward with that. But just different things to think about with the cost of transportation is our regular routes. But then also we have to provide transportation, like we talked about in the open enrollment conversation, that if a student requires any transportation to an alternate site, we do have to, we're legally obligated to provide that transportation. We also have to provide transportation if there is a student that is homeless or in transition. And then we do have to pay per state statute for private school contracts, and those Nicolay is the fiscal agent for that, and so then we are just billed each year for that. One of the pieces that I wanted to bring up was the cost for special ed. I budgeted 95 for special ed transportation, and the actual cost was about 169. So, to what Kelly's point was, is that, a lot of times when we take open enrollment, the students in or any students, and we do not necessarily know if we're gonna have to provide transportation, that can be an expense that we're not necessarily planning for. Because we don't know the needs until a student has come into the district. Another portion of special ed was vision and speech, because we do contract with a third party. And then just the cost of subs. One of the big challenges, obviously, that we have for it having subs in general. We are, I believe we're still the third highest paid district of what we pay substitute through teachers on call. Each of our buildings do have building subs, 2 full-time building subs. One of the challenges with that, though, is, for example, like Glen Hills, our 2 building subs are currently covering FMLA leave. So they're in that classroom full-time for the term of the leave, and so we don't have them to cover the day-to-day needs that we have. So obviously that's a challenge, and it's adding an extra burden to our teachers with the coverage. Yeah, sorry.
Have we done a cost analysis? Is that the wisest way to approach it, using our internal building subs?
No, yep, so that's one of the things that we are looking at, is that do we have the building subs stay and just because we did post the maternity leave as a position on weekend. We didn't get any candidates because we would have preferred to not utilize the building subs, but it's tough to get people to find those positions that will fill. I believe one of the positions was in a foreign language. So again, finding somebody that can cover that foreign language. We did reach out to a couple outside organizations, and then also like through CISA, through a temp agency, but just finding people with that skill set is hard to find.
I remember, I don't remember how long ago it was, we cut our number of full-time building subs, right? Maybe right before we were doing block scheduling. Did we used to have 3? Or floating, or no, we had 1 and we increased?
We had
Okay.
2, I think we had 3 building subs with COVID.
Oh,
With
okay.
COVID, and then that first year back full time, we cut down to 1. Just because it was to the point where it wasn't as needed, just because the amount of people out with COVID had decreased. But
Okay, and then increased and then added another building sub at some point?
yeah. And that was with a lot of conversation with our building principals as well.
Okay.
Just because, we are taking into consideration, we hear teachers when they get burned out if they have to cover other classes. So we obviously don't want to depend on that. We'd like to be able to utilize our building sub. But then it's also, it's hard to gauge that need, because if you have a third building sub and then you don't really need them, you're paying a lot for somebody that's not always. So we're trying to figure out creative ways to do that. We've had better luck, I believe, with not having as much turnover with staff, since we've utilized Maxim as a staffing agency for some of our paraprofessionals. So I feel like we've had, and Kelly could probably speak to that a little bit, because a lot of them are special ed paraprofessionals.
Okay.
So we have not seen as much turnover, I think, with paraprofessionals, which means it hasn't been as much. I mean, we're still always gonna have the challenges, but I mean, we're going into the winter months, so again, people are gonna be out and they're gonna be sick, so we're still again trying to be creative and make some shifts to try to provide more coverage for building funds.
And the fill rate from teachers on call is.
Yeah, I got a report for this past month and it was 43%.
So are you considering a third full was that part of what you're talking about?
Yeah, so
Or-
Glen Hills has, we're making some shifts so that, a current teacher will be moved into that building sub. And then we're making shifts there, and then in the end of November, we'll have 4 building subs. And then one of them will be floating back and forth to Parkway.
Okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
Lindsay, can I just clarify? So with the slide that we're currently on, well,
Thank you.
we're on, it's good timing. But if I'm looking at, for instance, the slide that had the special ed numbers and the blue and orange representation, just prior to this, you had transportation, budget, and actual, but then you just had vision and speech. Were there budgetary differences, or were those unaccounted for costs?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's kind of confusing. It was not budgeted into special ed in prior years. It was
Okay.
budgeted into Fund 10, but because it is a Fund 27 special ed expense, I did move it there, but it did increase Fund 27, but we're able to pay for a portion of that through the grants rather than having it be paid solely out of Fund 10.
Okay, so I'm not totally sure what you just said.
So it's an
So-
additional expense
Yes,
in Fund 27, but it's a neutral expense in a way because I'm
Okay.
just not paying it out of this fund, I'm paying it out of this fund, but I'm able to cover a portion of it in grants because I'm
Okay.
paying it in this.
and
fund.
so it doesn't have to be represented in our budget because it's represented in the funds.
Yeah.
Okay, and is that the same with substitutes?
So this is just for specialized substitute. I didn't factor in fund like general, like if it's gen ed teacher is out, that's not factored into this.
So they're just sped substitutes,
Mhm.
and this is, again, out of funds. So
Fund
it's not
27.
represented in a, okay, so this is a fund 27, thank you.
Mhm.
Holy cow.
Mhm.
So regular sub or a regular education classroom would be Fund 10?
Yeah.
Then, and you're, oh wow, oh, so you're paying teachers through Fund 27, okay.
Mhm. Okay, so I talked a lot about the fixed expenses that we have. The other piece that I wanted to.
Oh,
Oh, thank you, yeah.
Sorry, Carla.
I was waiting for the question slide.
Sorry. Okay.
Good job, Carla.
We can hear you.
Okay, so I'm not on variable expenses yet. I'm still wrapping my head around the creepy question slides, which I'm looking at on my phone. I want to make sure I understand because these slides are only showing me the prior 4 years, but because you don't have a bar for this year's budget, I'm assuming later you're gonna show me these same 4 bars with a 5th bar for this year's budget, right? So I can compare that easily.
Which slide are you on, Carla?
She's looking at all the bars. She means all the bars. All the slides.
15% increase in salary.
Is it in?
2019 through 23 budget and actual? Like, since we're considering 23-24 budget, it would have been great to see a blue bar on there for 23-24. Am I gonna see a later slide that provides that, or am I gonna put a number and have to?
It's just.
No, I can update it, but I didn't include the 23-24.
Because it would just be up to
Okay,
the
but it's-
state.
So you'll see
But
it in
it's
the,
not,
Sorry, go
it's
ahead.
not in this presentation though, right?
it is,
Um,
it is.
Oh, okay, just wanna, I don't wanna ask about it if it's later. Then the theme I take from this, tell me I'm right, the salaries last year, we went over budget. Health insurance, we went over, but everything we went over budget, right? Sped, transportation, everything was over budget, right?
Essentially,
I'm reading.
Yeah.
I'm reading that correctly, right?
Yeah.
That's how we ended up in deficit, I'm assuming. That's what I see, the salaries, we went some hundreds of thousands over budget. Health insurance over budget. I'm just not good at reading charts. I wanna make sure I'm reading it right. Okay. All right, that's my only question.
Andy, did you have anything?
So those were a lot of the fixed costs that we know we're gonna have coming out of our budget every year, salaries and benefits, transportation. Another piece is food service. So we went out to bid last spring and we had the one bid from Aramark. And one of the pieces that we talked about is just some different improvements that we put in the RFP for them to make. And so this year, they provided a 5-week menu cycle. And then we also created a student committee that is providing feedback each month. So we had the first month of feedback from students at Glen Hill of what the menus look like, what they thought. They provided some very honest responses and just different feedback, and Aramark has already taken them into consideration and made changes to implement that. They are coming to the board meeting in November just to kind of talk about what they have been serving, and then we'll also have some updated numbers with participation. We did see an increase with participation in comparison to prior years. We did have a food audit with DPI yesterday, and they just talked about how impressed they were with the improvements that Airmark had implemented since last spring. So we've had a new food service director, his name is Anthony, and he had just made a lot of changes, is really utilizing the resources he has to better train their staff. And again, like the students have just provided some honest feedback. They talked about the things they like the more diverse menu options. And then they've also talked about how, for example, they want ranch available for every option. Yes, and so it's been good to get the feedback, and it's been from each of the grade levels. So we'd like to continue that because obviously the students are eating it, so we'd like to make sure they like what they're eating. With Fund 50, we are continuing to offer the free lunches for them for all families. And that we'll be able to sustain that. We have a healthy fund balance in Fund 50, so we're able to offset that. And DPI does not like to see districts have a super large fund balance because really Fund 50 is supposed to be a cost neutral. You shouldn't be making a profit in food service. Oh, I didn't have.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, there's no
Okay, so
summary. Yeah, it's in your executive.
Okay, so the next piece is some of the variable expenses that we don't really control, which have a major impact on our budget. So the first one that I wanted to talk about was the private school voucher program. This is essentially a tool that is redirecting public school funds for tuition for private schools. Private schools are not required to provide the same level of special education services as public schools. And not all states offer the private school voucher program. So essentially it's a portion of any amount that the districts receive is allocated to private schools. And that can be anywhere up to $14,000. So in 2021-22, we paid $378,441. And in 22-23, we paid $531 and $531,918,000. So one of the pieces to remember with this is that there's no cap in the amount that districts can lose in funding to go to private schools. So it makes it really hard to budget for it because, as you can see, in 2 years we went up almost 200,000, and so that's a big hit for us to take. One of the pieces is that is going to probably be very pivotal if anything comes through with it. There was a lawsuit filed this past week on October 12th that challenging the Wisconsin School Choice Program as constitutional. Just saying that this taking away funding from public schools, and it is something where it is not sustainable. So they use the example for Madison that they received, I'm trying to use the example.
I think it's for every one kid that leaves, they lose 5 kids worth of
Yeah.
student.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was stood out.
Yeah. So it's a large amount. So one of the pieces that you can see that on is our revenue limit worksheet. So this is the tool that school districts use for funding. So this is the revenue limit worksheet from 21-22. And I wanted to point out a couple different things. So
Wait, where are you? Where are you, Lindsay?
Slide 11.
Oh, you're after the, okay. Wait, can I ask you a question just back to it's from your executive summary. I'm trying to figure out. Sorry. I'm trying to look at your executive summary and then look at this thing. No. Oh, no, it's okay. Okay, the private school voucher program. So went from 378 to 531. So what are you projecting for 23-24?
Essentially, and this is kind of how all of the neighboring districts do it, we're adding about 250,000, but that's only a guess. It could be potentially a lot more than that, or it could be less, but with the way that the trend's been going, it's probably gonna at least 200,000 more.
780, and then what fund where is this? This is the transportation, so is that fund?
No, it's not transportation, it's private school.
Oh, so where is that and what is that? What fund does that come from?
It's Fund 10.
Fund 10. Okay.
So that, can I go to the next slide?
Yes,
Wait,
I'm sorry.
That still gets levied though, but then you have to.
Nope, so you can see on here where it is in the levy. So I can
Okay,
walk through that.
thank you.
Okay.
Yep. So this is 21-22, where you can see down here in H and I, this is the private school voucher program. So there's one line item for special ed and then one item and then there's one line item for regular education. The other line that I wanted to point out is.
But you have 0 and 0.
No, sorry, I'm
so
11.
sorry, you guys, what is it that we're looking at right now?
This is the revenue limit worksheet.
And
So
where
what
do
It's a
we
piece
find
of it,
that?
right? It's not the whole
Yeah, it's not the
thing.
whole thing.
No, you can
So
actually download it from the DPI website.
Ours?
Yeah, no
Yeah,
DPI.
you can do any.
Okay,
district.
so this is
Ours.
the upper.
Oh,
this
ours?
is the
No, you
upper
can do it from
icon
DPI.
on
Yeah.
slide
Yeah, if you
13.
go to present mode, it'll pop up as just the one she's talking about.
Okay,
Yep, as I arrow through to pop up all three. So in line B, 7B, what that's called is the hold harmless non-recurring exemption. What that is that the state's way of making sure that districts do not lose more than 15% of their funding from the prior year. The reason they do that is because if you have things like declining enrollment and you're going to receive less funding, they do this hold harmless one-time non-reoccurring exemption. So that was 21-22. And then this one is 22-23. And so again, you can see we had an increase in the amount that we paid in the private school voucher program. It was $458,133 and then $73,779. And then you also see we see a slight decrease in what we received from the hold harmless. So that so going into this year, the 23-24, you can see we lost that hold harmless exemption. So essentially we lost $200,000 in revenue because we had an increase in enrollment. So the state decided you guys don't need that exemption any longer because you're not declining in enrollment. So we lost that funding. And as you can see right here, we do not know the amount. The blocks that are red are the ones that are filled out by DPI, and we don't fill those out, and we don't find those out until later in the year. So right now, I have no idea what those numbers could potentially look like, and this has really only been an expense that districts have worried about in the last 3 to 4 years. It has not been as big as this until recently. So it's one of the expenses that districts have to account for, but it makes it difficult because you don't know what amount it'll be. So that's why this lawsuit could be very pivotal because that could be a huge change in our funding that we're receiving.
So are you saying that, okay, where it's red, where it says private school voucher aid deduction, that's where you would add the 200,000 and it's like 780,000. That might be the number there. But I assume that when you're doing the budget, you are putting in some numbers there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay. All right.
Yeah. And so what Ben was talking about with the like how that factors into the levy. So it is like when you get the amount that you levy, that's already taken from it. So what I'm levying is already accounting for, well, not right now, but it's adjusted, but that's why the expenses, because you're not essentially levying for it because you don't know what that expense is yet. That makes sense?
Yeah.
You're making sure that if Carla or Andy have, I just want to make sure we're not, okay, thank you.
So the next slide talks about our mill rate. And so I went back from 2018. We've had a steadily declining mill rate of 668, 643, 696, 679, and 620. One of the things to keep in mind is we really want to try to keep that mill rate steady, just because if you have sudden drops in it, and so when you're thinking about budgeting, having a large drop in the mill rate and then having to bring it back up because you have to account for future expenses is not good practice. It's kind of a roller coaster. So you really want to try to keep that mill rate steady. So this is the revenue limit worksheet for the 23-24 school year. So one of the pieces that I wanted to add on there is on the lower left-hand corner, you can see our enrollment went up. The FTE, I should point that out. The FTE, which is different than the actual essentially like butts and seats. So the FTE was 904 and it went up to 940 this year. The other piece is this is new ICS independent charter FTE where it says 2. yes, it looks great because it added an additional FTE, so it's like, hey, like, are we gonna get additional funding? But this is a new line item that we've never seen before, so we're kind of waiting to find out what other impacts it has. Like, yes, is it getting an FTE, but are we going to get charged any expenses for that? So this is something that's shown up on the revenue limit worksheet within the last 2 weeks. So we're trying to navigate and figure out essentially what that means.
So these aren't numbers that you control.
No.
Okay.
Like, I report the September 3rd Friday count, so that's where
Yeah.
that 940 comes from.
And
Yeah.
do you download the pre-populated one?
Yeah.
Okay. I sent it.
And the lower right-hand corner is the revenue limit sheet for this year. So again, one of the pieces is the pink squares in the lower right-hand corner. So you have Fund 10, which is our general fund, Fund 38, which we still have a little less than $1 million left in debt. We follow a debt schedule.
Can you go just a little bit slower and point out where you are, like what you, just give me a minute to catch up to what you're referencing, okay?
So are you on
So-
this side?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so in
Okay.
the bottom right-hand corner, the pink square,
Okay.
there's Fund 10,
Mm-hmm,
which is our general fund.
mm-hmm,
And then Fund 38, which is debt. So debt, I follow the debt schedule that is
Mhm.
listed in DPI, and that's the amount that I put into that
Okay.
line item. What we put in those 3 boxes are controlled by the box in the upper right, just above it, the
Mhm.
12.6.
okay.
Okay, so that's set based on our enrollment and our property value.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So again, I, what was that?
those are auto
Yeah,
calculated.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm, okay.
So I can't touch those. It just tells me each year what is the amount that I can actually levy in
Okay.
those 3 funds.
Okay.
You have the other 3 funds below it, which are Fund 39, which is considered referendum debt, which we do not have.
Okay.
And then Fund 80, which is our community ed.
Mhm.
And then the other 2 cannot, they don't apply to us. So the 3 that are below at the bottom, districts have the capability to levy additional funds. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was Fund 80, and the levying the additional funds. The other piece that I wanted to talk about is in the lower right-hand corner, the very bottom box. You can see where it says 0.00612. That is what our mill rate would be with
Mhm.
levying this amount. So as you can see from the prior slide, our mill rate in the prior year was $6.20. So with this, we would drop our mill rate down to $6.12. So it wouldn't be a drastic drop, but it would still be a decrease in our mill rate.
Which is good or bad?
It's good because it's going down, but it's not a drastic drop.
It makes people happy.
Yeah, because it's less. That's what I,
It's
well,
stable,
okay,
yeah,
all right.
yeah.
We seem neutral about
Yeah.
it. I don't know.
No, I mean, it's good. It's
Okay.
good for
Yeah, okay.
and so I know, oh, go ahead.
So, Lindsay, given that we've had a kind of consistent pattern of dropping, is there any way to project forward at all where the mill rate would need to be increased? And should we be cautious around continuing to drop? I mean, can we even not drop?
No, I mean, if I did
It
not
has to
have
be this?
the 2.3 in the Fund 80, we would have dropped probably close to 5. So one of the pieces when we're levying those additional funds is wanting to keep that mill rate steady. But it functions in 2 folds. One is that it's keeping our mill rate steady, but also it's the long range planning that we have to start looking at. So I can go into that, but one of the pieces, yes, is that it's hard not to have it drop drastically, but you also don't want it to skyrocket. Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's kind of finding that
I
balance.
just don't want this year to be, woo, we had a drop, and then next year to be like, oh, it needs to be 8.
Yeah, but as we're doing that future long-term planning, that's some of the things that we'll look at with the different scenarios, is that if we were to, for example, go to referendum or whatever the case is, those are the different scenarios and things that we'll look at and what are the impacts that they'll have on the mill. Okay. Anything from,
Carla, did you have any questions?
I will admit, I only hear some of what you guys are saying.
I'm sorry.
So I'm looking at the presentation and on my phone. And I'm looking at the deficit projection. And I'm sitting here processing our operational referendum ends for this fiscal year that includes 26, right? 25, 26.
It falls off at the end of 24-25. I moved closer to Lindsay, so hopefully that helps, so I'm sorry.
The last
No,
5-year
that's okay.
forecast we got was in
It's because I'm not there.
November of 20.
All right.
So one of the pieces that I wanted to talk about, as you saw in that prior slide, the 2.3 million in Fund 80. So what the district spends in Fund 80 are essentially the cost for Good Hope, which is the building that we lease out to Glendale Heights, the Jewish High School, and a couple other community members for different programs that they offer. So one of the pieces that when we're looking at in our facility study, and that's why Mike Hacker is here, because he's also going to just talk about the impact of all of this in alignment with our facility study. So I'll kind of go through the numbers and then he'll give a little bit more information as well. So with the 2.3 million that I'm levying into the additional amount, the reason being is when we did our facility study this summer and we looked at Good Hope, we looked at what are the costs of the needs that the building will have. So at first, the first piece was to look at what is the cost for the building to run in general. And so this is a 6-year average. And so it was about 452,000 on average for the last 6 years to run the building. So keep in mind also is that portion of that was Summer Academy and then just the cost for the custodians that go over to maintain the building as well. So as you can see, the 452,000 in prior years, Fund 80 typically had a levy amount of about 546,000. So when we look at the expenses since 2019, we have the orange and blue are the rental revenue and the property taxes. So what in this slide, what you really should take out of it is that there's the cost of what it is for the building. So it would seem like, oh, we're functioning at a profit in this building because of like the levy amount being 546,000 and the expenses were 452. But really, if you think about it, it's not a profit because our rental revenue that we're bringing in is about 106,000, but our costs are substantially more than that. So the profit isn't really a profit because that's what we're still asking for the taxpayers to offset in the expenses in the levy. So essentially Good Hope, the amount of expenses that we have is being covered by the rental revenue, and then the rest is being covered by the tax revenue, but it's not allowing us to put anything in fund balance to cover the future costs that we'll have for that building. So when we did the facility walkthrough, we found that there was a substantial amount of need in the building, around 6.6 million. And so if we look at what our budget can handle, and this is only Good Hope, this isn't even looking at the need that Glen Hills or Parkway has, the levying the additional funds will allow us to start planning for those capital improvement needs that we'll have in the next 3 to 5 years, or even in the next year to 2 years. Because that's also, you know, we don't know, like last year we had to repair a portion of the roof and a boiler. So there's a lot of high cost expenses that we have to start thinking about for that building. And so being able to levy that additional amount allows us to start setting aside the fund balance to be able to start planning for those. I think one of the things that we also have to think about is, this slide just talks about how it would allow us to build up the fund balance. So the gray is essentially saying the catch-up maintenance or the levy amount is allowing us to not just sustain where we've been, but build up. And because otherwise we're going to have the $6.6 million of expenses to just upkeep, and that wasn't even just addressing the code compliance that we'll have, and we won't have any funds to cover it. So in the past, we had, I had that pie chart at the beginning that just showed this is a portion of the property upkeep. And then if we have the additional levied funds, that would show that over the next 3 years, if we levy that 2.6 million, we'll be able to start having the larger portion cover the property needs of the building. And a smaller portion of it is going to the salaries and the supplies and the general maintenance of the building. So one of the
Two
things
point
that
three, you're talking, you said 2.6, you're talking about the community, when you say levy additional funds, you're talking about this adding of the community services fund that you added here, right?
Exactly.
I'm understanding that, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So one of the other pieces that I think is important is that when we're doing the facility study is.
Andy wants to ask a question.
Oh,
Sorry.
I don't see him.
Oh.
I can see him
he-
on the screen. It's just as,
Trying, but,
yeah, it's just.
oh,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah, sorry,
Yeah, so this is an Andy problem.
okay,
I can hear Carla, Andy, I'm sorry, I can't see you or hear you.
to me, okay,
I can't hear.
go on, Lindsay, sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
I'll see if
so
he can
one
help
of
me what
the
it is.
things to consider as, we are obviously looking at, all of our long range planning and different needs in the district is, I think it would just be, fiscally responsible to look at all of the options of that building. Just because I think as, we have some great partners in the district that are here tonight. And we want to continue partnerships with, the tenants, like whatever we decide to do with the building, but I think just to explore all the options, and I think Mike can kind of dive into that a little bit more. Sure.
I do have Andy's question.
Oh, sure.
Where did the dollar figures come from, the expenses for the building for Good Hope?
The facility study this summer.
Okay.
Yeah, from the facility stuff, I can type it.
Are you,
Type
are
it
you,
to him.
Yeah.
I'm just clarifying, are you talking about the expenses from the prior years or for the maintenance needs?
That's
The maintenance
text
needs
I got.
years was the architect and the
I can
construction
type
firm,
And then we have the capital improvement plan that was done under Jim Beckman, right, that also.
but that didn't have any cost tied to it. So that's one of the big
Oh, I
pieces.
thought
So
it-
we had
okay.
the facility study done with performance services, but there
Okay.
were no costs associated to that.
Okay,
So this is the first time where we really had the cost of anything that we would need for the long term.
but when we improved the the 10-year capital plan, that didn't include costs?
No, it just had like the number of things and the timeline of what to do it, but not the physical cost.
So that's part of what the work
Okay.
was this summer, was to add cost.
And so that was one of the
Okay.
pieces when we had Findor from PRA came in.
Okay.
They reviewed that the facility study and then updated it and provided the
Cost.
cost.
Is that part of the presentations we've seen, or is that something you guys are working with or have seen?
They did
behind
the
the-
initial in the spring before they started the building tour.
Okay,
So, and then once they did the tours, or once they did the facility study, that's when they were able to take the study from performance services, update it as needed, and then put the cost.
I know, so in the presentation, we got the general, the total of the costs, right?
Mhm.
That's how it was presented to us,
I
not
think it's
every,
this one.
not every line, right, like
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Okay,
And so
That's
that,
Yeah, we can.
Okay, it's something with my desktop unfortunately. Yeah, I am concerned about those dollars not being given to us because, and the other, I just have a few observations. First, I mean, I understand that, we need to discuss, expenses over at, good old school, but I mean, just getting into nitty gritty of these details and I'm looking at the rest of the presentation. Right now, we're just talking about a budget. We're not really, I mean, I feel like a lot of this is maybe off point of, the budget specifically for this coming year. But I guess, my larger question on that is, it feels like, we're getting into a point where we're perhaps unnecessarily at this point dissecting costs that are associated with running the building. I mean, it may not be a profitable building, but I don't think that's a lost building either. I just think that there are expenses that are inherent to it. So I guess, how does this tie into what we are doing today in terms of, approving a budget for this year?
yeah, so I would say right now how I budgeted, I'm going into the 23-24 school year with the intent that everything stays the same. And so everything stays the same and we keep Good Hope. We still have to figure out a way to fund the need that the building has for that 6.6 million, because over the next, 10 years.
Well, that's a very casual, that you just flipped off, and I'm a little concerned about that, if we keep Good Hope. I mean.
No, okay, so Andy,
I mean,
We're
I
asking,
just, I feel like I just have to say, I understand the condition of the building,
Mhm.
but I feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves talking about whether or not we're gonna keep the building.
so
And
we're
that-
asking,
Especially for today.
yeah, we're
I
asking
think
for,
I'm understanding.
Sorry, Carla.
Am I understanding the reason you're talking about this is because you want $2.3 million in our levy to
yes,
go into the community service fund for maintenance on Good Hope.
yes.
Do I finally get it?
Yeah, and
Oh,
that's not.
thanks,
that's not
Carla.
an If.
I didn't
question.
get that.
It's not an if, it's because we have Good Hope.
Okay.
And that's the intent of
I
the budget for
see.
this year, is we have this building and these are the needs of the building.
And then part of your projections included continuing with funding Fund
Exactly.
80 in a certain manner to maintain.
The
Good Hope.
2.3.
Then I have a different question.
Okay.
What
can go
about
after
maintenance
Carla.
on the other building?
Yep, so that's another
Why are-
piece of the conversation.
But in the budget that you're proposing to us, that you're only including the 2.3 million for the Good Hope facility, where is
Yeah.
maintenance money gonna come from?
Mhm.
Yep, so
For
that.
the schools that actually house our students?
Mhm. And no, that's a great question, but I think that, can I hold
Say
your
what
question?
you
Cause I
said.
think it would be helpful for Mike to say his.
Yeah, and the reason we're talking about Fund 80 right now for Good Hope is because Fund 80 can only be used for Good Hope because
Mhm.
it's a community.
Yeah.
So that's why we're specifically talking about that fund right now for Good Hope,
Okay, and
but that doesn't dismiss the other schools.
No.
I'm gonna let Mike talk and then maybe that will answer something and then you can.
Yeah, Mike's gonna try to,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, Matt, man, good to see everybody.
Hi,
can you scoot up, because they're not able to
Obviously, you
hear.
feel all this time
Closer.
together, right?
Sorry.
Sure, it's okay.
Come on.
We're
in.
having them,
Here and
yep,
know
we're
that voice
asking,
belongs to Mike.
we're asking
know.
them to scoot up.
We got computers everywhere, microphones, cameras. Well, you can see how, the compounding dialogue we started over the summer to start to
Mhm.
build up towards how do we plan for the levy for next year? How do we sustain our current operations and our current buildings?
Mhm.
All ties to really what is the vision long-term. So that's really why I'm here tonight, just to try to maintain the continuity
Mhm.
of that conversation, because that's going to be an ongoing dialogue. As you all know, we're going to engage the community in a few weeks for some conversation and back with the board to talk about what the district could look like from a facility standpoint going forward. And you can see where starting to make significant investments in key facilities is inherently tied directly to the game plan long-term for the master plan for these buildings. Okay, and so that's where, as we've dialogued as a group, and you could start to see these costs mounting, right? You can go back to each of those summer presentations, you see that line at
Mhm.
the far right there.
Mhm.
That's almost $10 million that the district is looking at coming toward them in potential needs from a facility standpoint in Good Hope.
Mhm.
Right, so $9.8 million that are looming as projected from the PSI initial report that's been validated by PRA and Findorf now with these budgeted
Mhm.
figures. When those will come, how proactive the district is to tackle certain things, that's all in the planning for next
Right.
steps, right? How do we prioritize things? Do we just
Mhm.
tackle roofs as they fail? Do we let the boilers crash and then fix them? Do we try to get ahead of those? That's all tied to obviously what funding is available and in what position the district might be in to make that investment. But it does tie to a broader conversation. That's why I appreciate, Andy, your point being brought up, not trying to get ahead of ourselves in any way. But it is, I think it is prudent to be mindful about what is the long-term game plan for that facility going forward, and not meaning to open that dialogue in depth tonight, but maybe plant a
Mhm.
seed for what's, maybe a dialogue to continue to prep for forthcoming, because that right now, as you'll remember from that presentation this summer and touring the building, that building does not serve educational core purpose for the district today,
Mhm.
right? Certainly has community value and certainly really trusted relationships with tenants that are there that are providing great services in the community, all to be noted, but being noted at a annual deficit, right, of about $350,000, right? That's the 450 minus the 100 or so, right?
Mhm.
And this potential $9.8 million of looming additional investment that is coming, I think does position the district to have a dialogue about, what is the right long-term projection. So what we've been waiting for, which I think we're now in a stronger position to stand on, is PRA confirming that at this point, there's not significant growth coming in enrollment, right? So we're not projecting that all of a sudden we're going to be bursting at the seams at the two buildings we're in and need to spill over to that building immediately.
We had nicer buildings.
We,
Great.
yeah,
Thanks.
together. We haven't
Sorry.
heard, no, we haven't heard about emerging programming, right? That all of a sudden we
Right.
don't have space for, or that would accommodate.
Okay.
So with that said, it just all sets the stage for, I think, the broader dialogue about what is the long-term plan for the building as we go forward. Okay, and so that's where in this scenario, not knowing the immediate next steps, not knowing the board's position, again, tonight, not intended to lock in that position, but important as we set the levy to know that there are dollars available in this fund to continue to support the tenants that we have, either in that building and or funding accommodations other places, if in fact that's another path. Okay, and so it's important, I think the key notion there is building in flexibility within the budget so that the district can continue to work to create a game plan that best serves the community as a whole.
Okay. Ben had it, sorry,
Ben,
Ben and then
yeah.
Karn is that, if that's all right.
Okay, so I got a little confused with Fund 80, so I read about it. So, because it's been a while since I took that business course, so you can, so how do you choose how much you levy into Fund 80?
So you have to look at what, because we can only put certain costs in Fund 80. So
Right.
for example, in the past, the district had a portion of the pool expenses because Nicolay rents our pool.
Right.
However, DPI and an auditor said, nope, you can't do that because this building is housed in Glen Hill. You cannot use Fund 80. So the
Right.
pool expenses now come out of Fund 10.
Okay.
So that's another conversation. Another thing.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
only specific programs and costs that benefit the entire community can go into Fund 80. So in looking at what has been the cost to maintain that building, so essentially like that's 452,000 has been why we've levied that roughly that 546,000 over the last several years, and that's been the consistent number. However, with levying that amount, it doesn't provide us any cushion to put into fund balance to cover those future costs that we have.
Okay, so is there a limit to how much you
Nope,
can?
you can ask as much as you want in those three funds like Fund 80. However, you
It
want to be
just-
mindful of the impact it'll have on the mill rate.
But you can move Fund 10 to Fund 80, but you can't move Fund 80 to Fund 10.
Yes, but you can't, you have to be careful about what you're moving, because again, it has to be one of those things that's an eligible expense.
Right, okay. So, but with good hope, we can use Fund 80 because it's not used for any
Yep,
school
exactly.
purposes. Okay, but it is a separate levy.
Exactly.
So, okay, yeah, what do you do with the surplus in there then?
In Fund 80.
Fund 80, yeah,
So it would go into fund balance, because then if you levy that 2.8 million, and let's say it only cost us 500,000 in a year, that means the remainder of that sits in fund balance, is essentially like a savings account. So we're putting it into fund balance or our savings account, then we can carry that over each year and build it up and address the expenses as they come in. So we're putting it aside for this year, and then, and
what
that's
should we levy in Fund 80 last year?
5 something.
540.
And so now it's up to 2, okay.
And so we really didn't have the cost of what we would need for these long-term capital improvement needs until this year. And so now it's, okay, we have to adjust and account for these upcoming needs, because like Mike said, they're coming at us and we don't have the funds to pay for it right now.
Karn had a question.
Yeah, well, Karen's not sure she remembers, but it was around something that you had stated.
I think I remember the moment your face did something.
Oh.
It was when you talked about our community partners and like in the space they're in, or was it that, or in a potentially different space, like supporting?
I think it was a comment about funds and movement.
Oh, the fund 10 to fund 80 piece?
No,
Because he didn't say, I mean, yes,
it
I'm
was something Mike
super,
said.
anyway, whatever. It's one of those moments. I'm
Sorry.
not gonna
So
recapture.
I
No,
saw
it's
your
okay.
face. and-
I know. I don't play poker for a reason. So fund balance though still remains true to the fund that it comes
Yeah.
from. So
Mhm.
a surplus Fund 80 is still specific to Fund 80.
Yeah, so when we put them into fund 80, and let's say we have an expense that comes up in fund 10, I can't use what's
Yeah.
sitting in fund 80, it has to be used for fund 80.
And Fund 10 would be specific to the academic educational buildings?
Yep, the general
Yeah.
cost of our district, yes. So
Okay.
predominantly salaries and benefits, instructional, all of the costs that are coming out of Glen Hills and Parkway, essentially are Fund 10 or Special Ed Fund 27.
So then if there were a scenario in which we would start to use Good Hope in an academic manner, do we lose all of Fund 80 capacity for that building?
No, because you would no longer be eligible for Fund 80 because it's no longer serving just the community, it's serving as an instructional purpose.
So then
She's
that's,
saying
so
what
yes.
happens to the one.
Yes.
Oh, then that's something that can shift because of the use of the building, or you can. It's a tricky word to answer. So if you have funds levied into Fund 80, and like Mike said, if we utilize one of our buildings for a different space and can justify that cost of Fund 80, you can use it one of these buildings, but you have to be able to justify and show that that is an accurate expense. So
A community expense at a different
Yeah,
building or just a different community
So,
expense.
like one of the things that you have to have for it to be an eligible Fund 80 expenses, it has to be a completely separate entrance from a school. So for example, like our senior center is here, but it's not a Fund 80 expense because they use the same entrance as the school. So if we were to design a
Create a
building.
doorway. Secret
I
entrance.
think that pivot would have happened with the pool,
Mhm.
right? So to that question, when at some point the pool went from a Fund 80 to a Fund 10 by the auditor's determination, it pivoted from Fund 80 bucket into one that the Fund 10 bucket had to manage.
Yeah.
That in theory would be the same thing at Good Hope. So if Good Hope is Fund 80 and we decided all of a sudden now we're gonna start using educationally, we would have to make the same flip in theory that the pool did. And I can't speak to how the dollars move between that, but it would be the same kind
Yeah.
of conceptual flip that would happen at that
And
point.
is there a percentage tipping point of a building? Like if we had, so Good Hope has multiple separate entrances. If we were to utilize only a portion of the building.
Yep, so I think one of the things to think about is if, like, for Good Hope, if we were to utilize that as an instructional space, there are also things with code.
Yeah.
Like ADA compliance that above, like what Mike was talking about with the 9 million.
Right, because that wasn't
that-
folded in because it's not an
Mhm.
academic.
Exactly.
Yeah, and if it's a permanent scenario, like the pool as an example, one of the dialogues is maybe that needs to be metered separately.
Mhm.
So maybe we need to bring in a separate gas meter, separate electrical meter as a means of determining the usage
Yep.
to shift it back to Fund 80. So if a permanent solution was a 50-50 split, and that's how we may be able to set up that renovation to serve both. So that you could isolate those funds to make sure you're aligning with those buckets correctly. So if that was a strategy, we could dialogue about that.
Okay, specific question about the levy, the 2.3, so kind of building on Ben, how did you come up to the 2.3 and not more? And do you foresee utilizing that all in this budget year, or do you foresee having a surplus for it and building the savings?
I ideally would like to use it to build it up because we do have some costs that are projected to be needed to be replaced in the
Yeah.
next 2 years. But I would like to build it up in fund balance so that we can tackle some of those higher costs that we have. Like some of the individual line items that we have are, 300,000, 400,000. So building that up would allow us to tackle some of those big pieces. But also, the building has a lot of conditions, like we were not planning on the roof or the boiler that had to go, and those were all very significant expenses. So yes, it's building it up to take on the cost that we're projecting, but also then if we do have costs that occur now, that we can take care of them.
But so why 2.3? Why not more?
I could, but I wanted to keep in mind the mill rate.
But you have the mill rate decreasing slightly.
Yes, I could do it more.
No, I was just curious. Okay. Is there, go ahead.
Yeah,
Ben.
so it looks like we're having an issue with our like general education fund now. And so like, I guess I'm a,
Is there a
now that like,
specific issue?
yes, there is.
Okay.
Now that I know what we're doing with Fund 80, right there, it says the level 1 expenses that we need to do now. It's at a little over 300,000. And so it feels like we're maybe getting a little ahead of ourselves by levying $2.3 million. Because we haven't decided if we're going with like long range plans with Good Hope on reconstruction.
Sure, so I think that the other piece to keep in mind is that even if we levy it, like right now, we're going into this year, is everything staying the same, because any decision we make will not affect the budget in the 23-24 school year. And so whatever we decided was Good Hope, like keeping it, not keeping it, whatever. We are going into this year as everything is staying the same, because this is something that would not change in this fiscal year. But the piece of that though is that we're setting aside the funds now so that whatever our long range plans are, we can adjust for the capital needs that are in Good Hope now, or whatever option developments we come up with in the facility study. And that if that's something that we can shift those costs to, if we, because Glendale Heights is a partner in our district, and that is considered like our cost with them are Fund 80 expenses. So if we were to perhaps put them in a different building and can justify that they are a community portion of that building, we can take those funds that we levied in Fund 80 and put those costs, whether it's renovating a space for Glendale Heights to be in Glen Hill.
Yeah.
That's just like total.
I guess because again, what if we decided to go with level 1 renovations and maybe part of level 2 renovations? You know, what if we were like, well, okay, level 3 maybe we shouldn't deal with or whatnot right now.
Well, okay.
Well, no, I mean, this
But
is
you're getting hypothetical about future.
well, they are getting
discussions we have.
hypothetical with 2.3
No,
million.
I think what you're doing right now is keeping everything the same. You're budgeting as if nothing changes. We this is nothing changes. This is Good Hope is ours. It has the same use as it does. And those are the projections coming down the road if nothing changes. So if we start talking about what if something changes, we're getting into the facilities planning conversation that is not, I don't think, relevant to the budget right now.
Well, that's what we're doing right now is we're predicting that there are going to be these bigger expenses, which is why we're levying 2.3 million or voting on it rather than the typical 500,000. So that's why I'm talking about it, because we are sort of making assumptions here, and that's
We're
what I'm
making an
worrying.
assumption that nothing changes.
No, by levying
Right.
$2.3 million,
Okay.
that is a change.
Well, the
Yeah, I
budget,
think what Ben's
Okay.
trying to say, and
Yeah,
I might be
help me.
wrong then, but what I hear you saying, what I'm hearing Lindsay say is that, as I understand it, Lindsay, you're asking for more than we are likely to spend on Good Hope in the coming year, right?
this year.
This year, yeah.
In this year, and as I interpret it, you're trying to smooth the curve for taxing citizens for expenses we're gonna have over the next 3 to 5 years.
Exactly.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I want,
Sorry.
yeah, right.
Yes.
So, but I hear what Ben is saying, right? He's saying that in the coming year, it looks like we're only anticipating a few $100,000 in expenses. Right, so you're asking us to approve a levy that includes some excess amount that's gonna go into savings to smooth the curve to taxpayers and to make sure we have it there when the next big item fails, which we anticipate it will, right?
Exactly, because that 337 is on paper, what is something that should be replaced. But, you know, like I mentioned, we had a boiler and a portion of the roof, which were two very large expenses that were not slated to be replaced in this year. That those are the pieces. So yes, 337 is what the projected expenses are, but we have no way of knowing
Because
what is something
if that money's not in the Fund 80 balance, where does it come out of?
Fund
If we
10.
have to spend,
Fund 10.
right? And you're projecting a deficit budget for Fund 10 already, right?
And that's not even addressing the capital maintenance that we have in Parkway and Glen Hill.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know, Ben, I'm processing this too. Does that help you with some context for it? That's what I'm thinking about. I'm like, if we don't have any slush in our Fund 80 balance and something breaks at Good Hope, we're gonna dip into our, hypothetically, if we pass it, already $700,000 in deficit budget to try to cover unexpected expenses at Good Hope. And that makes me anxious.
How much is in Fund 80 right now? Because it looks like we do put funds into Fund 80 and we have, I mean, because I know you're saying it's not a surplus, but there would be a surplus in Fund 80. So how much of a surplus do we have in Fund 80?
I'd have to look. I can get back to you with it though. I don't know offhand right now.
Because it kind of looks like, I mean, am I reading this right? Where
Which
that,
side are you on?
Looking at
17, where all those gaps would
Good Hope
be would
operating.
be the sum of all those gaps. So like, it kind of looks like we probably do have close to $1 million
in
No, we
funding
don't have
right now?
custom, because that's assuming that, you know, the expense, like, we do not have a million.
This is 2024, so that would be. That's assuming this budget was approved in the way you asked.
Mhm. Yeah, because the gray is with the levied additional amount. That's not what we have now. That gray is with the catch-up maintenance of
Oh,
the Fund 80 levy amount. So
What
the,
do you mean by catch-up maintenance? You mean maintenance we should have done in the past or something else?
no, I mean, I wouldn't say in the past, but yes, I would say it's maintenance that needs to be done, past or present or future. That gray, which is the additional levied amount, is to account for that.
Yeah, we would call that deferred maintenance. It's
Mhm.
equipment we know is past its life expectancy
Mhm.
that we're, you know,
It was that.
doing our best to keep
That's
running,
right.
but could die at any moment, right? That's deferred maintenance.
Mhm.
That's what we're trying to get caught up on so that we don't have those surprise costs or lessen the chance of those as much as possible.
Okay.
Wait, I was talking about number 17 though, going back to 2019.
Oh, Fund 80.
Cause it looks like
expense.
we do have, like, so I would just be curious how much we have in Fund 80.
I can check in that.
Cause I mean. I am reading that correct, right? Where those gaps would be a surplus,
You're on 17.
17. Cause it's other expenses on top of facility maintenance from 2019
Oh,
to
I see what you're
2024.
I mean, yes, because of the levied amount that was in the property taxes, and you could, yeah, I get where you're saying now. So there is the fund balance, and I usually know this on offhand, but, so we do have a fund balance in there, but it's not enough to cover the upcoming need that we'll have.
Yeah.
So
Well,
she's saying it's not enough. You're asking if there's money to cover it. She's saying no.
yeah, but I'm saying like, if you're saying like you're with the Good Hope budgeting, you know, 0 to 2 years, it's 300,000. 3 to 5 years over that time period, it's not like it's gonna be 2.7 million all in 1 year.
It
So
could be more.
so it could be, yeah, or it could be less, you know, so I just,
She's trying to create a safety net
yeah, well,
and you're. What are
Yeah.
you?
So
doesn't seem
part of
like you
me-
like-
well, yeah, so part of me just thinks like. I don't know, like for some reason, to me, 2.3 million seems like we're getting a step ahead of ourselves, like. Maybe if we did 1 million or 1.5, like when I'm looking at this, and again, I am just seeing this presentation now for this, but. I guess, yeah, it seems like we're getting ahead of ourselves with 2.3 million. I mean, maybe it's normal. I honestly have no idea.
Well,
And I think a lot of some other districts, when they have the surplus, use Fund 46, which last year we put the 200,000 in Fund 46, so we have that started.
And which one's Fund 46? Is that
So that's for
investments?
capital improvements.
Okay,
oh,
but
right,
that's
can't
for
touch that
5
for
years.
5 years.
Can't
Oh.
touch it for 5 years. And so a lot of districts, if they have surpluses, will move, like they'll open a Fund 46 and then over the next 5 years, move funds into there. And that's something that they can use to help offset
Yep.
costs as well.
which funds can you move into 46?
You
Can I
can't, Fund
just-
46 standalone.
Oh,
Can I
it's
just
just-
clarify, like, what is the conversation we're having right now?
Yeah.
Because I think we're here to approve the budget, and I think your questions are excellent. And I do understand the concern around Fund 80 and the money, but if it's smoothing the mill rate and it's addressing costs that presumptive of nothing changing, we're going to incur. I can appreciate why it's there, and I'm just wondering
And-
if continuing to dig into this right now makes sense compared to moving forward with the rest of the
Well,
budget.
we're
Well, Lindsay,
approving
do you
this tonight.
do you understand Ben's point
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
hesitation, like
Because-
concerns?
Because again, the main concern is total over the next 10 years is, 6.6 million. So we're, just in 1 year, we're gonna levy 25% of that,
But I
Yeah.
think it's also important to keep
Yeah.
in mind, we don't know what our funding will look like over the next 10 years.
right?
Because we're already losing funding from things like the private school voucher program, like all these different pieces that we have to think about. This is looking at what our funding is and what we receive from the state now and planning for it. I don't like, what will we get per pupil in the next 3 to 5 years? So this is planning with what the revenue that we have now and the resources we have now. and planning for it.
So
I would say that Lindsay has sufficiently explained her recommendation and her point. I think that your concerns have been sufficiently stated. You think we are overshooting and that you would like to see less money being levied under this fund?
well, I mean, I'm just saying personally, I'm a little nervous about doing 2.3
Okay.
million right now.
I
Yeah.
think that point has been made,
Okay,
and just not belabor it and keep it moving, then we should continue.
So the next step is certifying the levy with the amount that I had indicated on the revenue limit worksheet. And I can go back to that, and then it's approving the 23-24 with the deficit. And then we also continuing to improve planning for the capital improvement needs for the 23-24 school year. And then, as Mike talked about, is you know, it's not committing to anything, but did the board want to give any direction if you want us to explore reaching out to options, so that when we, for example, if we were to look at a broker to see what is the use of that land and what it can be done with it, and then looking at it through the equity lenses of what impact would that have on our community, on the tenants, and all of those pieces. So again, there's no cost, there's no commitment or obligation with the district, but it's just starting the dialogue and that conversation to look at all of our options, so that whatever Mike said is the long-term plan for the building, we're exploring all the options.
My suggestion for that would be to have that be a November COW agenda item, just
Okay.
as a discussion
Sure.
about what we want to do, because I think what I'm
Mhm.
hearing from everybody is that deserves some more,
Sure.
conversation. But I'm glad you've raised it, and it's something good to talk about, and we can, invite community to come talk about it as well. So and
I
that's-
just had one last slide.
Yeah.
And so this
But
one,
I'm wondering, do you guys want to do this recommendation first before she goes into looking at the
Well,
template?
I think she finishes her presentation. This is a presentation, so we're
Okay,
not,
okay.
we've asked questions, but we're not
just
actually
wondered.
engaging in discussion, so.
Okay.
so
I'd
this last
say
slide is the sample monthly report. So this is, and I hear loud and clear that this is something that I think will be very beneficial, for being able to see where we're at. So one of the pieces that it highlights is that, what are their actual year-to-date expenses? What are our, budgeted expenses? But then also the big piece here is that the black tells us the projected. So it looks at, this is what you have spent, this is what you budgeted for, and this is what, if you continue on the current course that you're at with your expenses, this is where you're gonna land. And this is a huge tool to have, because then it can help us plan for the upcoming expenses and things like the increased cost of transportation or special ed. If it's noticing a trend of increasing in some of those costs, it allows me to see what are those costs that I can prepare for in the upcoming year. Because essentially when you're budgeting, you're looking and straddling 3 years, prior year, current year, and next year. So this report gives you the breakdown for each of the major categories, I would say, that you have in expenses, and then tells you where we're landing right now with our total from what we budgeted to what we spent and where it looks like it'll head.
To keep us moving on the budget, could this also be a COW agenda item, and could board members take a look at it and submit feedback or questions between now and our COW meeting? And then it would be great, like for you to just kind of walk me through this. You know what I'm saying? And the
I'd like
public
to see
too.
it on that.
The public too, if it's something we're gonna start using and be a public document, it would be good to just have that out there, like a more in-depth look at it. A tutorial, yes. This for dummies, for me, thank you.
No, absolutely.
So if there are no objections to just kind of putting that on our next COW meeting, Carla, I see a thumbs up, okay. Andy's not texting me, I don't think. So, okay, so then, the budget presentation is concluded. Thank you, Lindsay. That is a lot of work.
I
and
just
it-
need you to certify the levy.
We're not,
Oh, okay.
hold on. I know you need things from us, but, I want to just make sure there isn't any audience or visitor participation around what has just been presented.
wait,
No.
sorry, what was,
There are no motions happening. I'm just moving to visitor participation just to make
Okay.
sure nobody has any comments or anything on this.
I would be interested to hear if Andy has any, information on what people have done with Fund 80 before, because I don't know if
it's there,
I don't know why I'm shocked by this, but like, this seems like a big change.
Okay, well, we can get to board discussion about but right now, I don't think there's visitor participation, so that means we can entertain a motion and we can then engage in discussion.
Okay.
Okay, and thank you, Mike.
Questions for Lindsay?
Yeah,
Can I
but wait,
ask
we need a motion before we're gonna engage in, that's all, okay? Just trying to do it by the book. Okay, so you have 2 recommendations in here. And is there an order with what, like,
I
you
did
want
a
them to be
budget and then the levy.
okay, so if we want to talk about the budget, what do we want to talk about first, the budget or the levy? What's the? Or do we want to entertain a motion for both and just go for it?
I'm so confused right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there, no, well, okay. We had our presentation, there's no visitor participation, it's now time for us to like engage, like, if you have concerns, more questions, this would be a good time after we have a motion so that we could talk about it.
Help me find that page.
Okay, go to board docs.
Certified tax levy, so it's just,
I know this is, it would be nice to have this printed out.
Okay,
Okay, so the public,
Well, no.
thank you.
so in the public content, there is a summary of the 2023-2024 amended budget. You'll see it says the general fund, revenue, expenditures, special education fund. I don't have to read these numbers out loud, do I? Non-referendum debt, right? Food service fund, community service fund, gross total, all funds. And you have your revenue expenditures. So a net total budget of $23,006,354.18 is the revenue.
That's the wrong number. That's the revenue number.
Sorry, expenditures, you're asking us. $23,733,585.84. Is there a motion to approve the recommended 2023-2024 budget of that amount? And note that this is just so we can engage in discussion.
So
Does that make sense? Okay, no, yeah, okay. Is there a second?
Or second.
Thank you, Carla. Okay, now, how would you guys like to go about talking, discussing,
I have baseline questions.
Okay, let's do that. Carla,
I'll start with
your
my,
computer's
I'm
gonna
a
die.
dummy questions,
Yep, start with your I'm a dummy questions.
because I am,
Is it that one?
I'll tell you what my 2 questions are, and then Lindsay, you can, or whoever can help me process
Okay.
this.
Go ahead,
I
Carla.
don't understand how a governmental entity's deficit budget works. If we pass a budget with a $770,000 deficit, I don't honestly understand how that works, how we would eventually pay for expenses that we have without having the money to pay it. That's my first question.
Sure,
Good
so,
question. Not a
So
dumb
my
question.
second question, let me just get them out,
Yep.
and then I'll just silently listen best I can. The $23 million budget is, so what I did is the best I could do. I have a color coded annotation. I took the October agenda. I put in pink the numbers from the preliminary budget we approved in June. And I went all the way back a year and I put in blue what we did last year, all right? So that was the best I could do, trying to see the history, right? And
Yeah.
some of your bars helped in the presentation, but they still didn't give me like last year to this year, right? Year over year. What I see is that last year, I hope I have this right, we approved a budget of just about 18 million and some change, right? But even last year's, I looked back on the agenda, it's a little confusing. I also saw 19 million in there or something. And this year, so this year, we're seeing an increase in the proposed budget of over $4 million, right? 5 million? So that seems like an enormous increase, and I'm trying to understand where that extra 5 million is coming from. Or whether I have my numbers all wrong. So that's my two questions, generally, my two big ticket questions.
Do you want me to kind of go?
Yeah,
ahead with the
please,
answer? Okay.
please answer. Yeah, please.
So I think a couple of things to factor in is that, last year was really essentially the first year post-pandemic. So I will say that I budgeted very conservatively and did not account for some of the increases in expenses that we ended up having this year. Like I kind of talked about the increases in special ed. So with the increase in special ed costs, that meant that we had a larger transfer from Fund 10, which was close to like $1 million. And so there's a portion of that. We had an increase in staffing, which is also a large cost in Fund 10 with the salaries and benefits. And so all of these pieces adding up, and then you also have just the normal increased cost that you have with transportation. We had an 8% food service increase in our contract. And then transportation had an 8% increase. So there's always going to be fixed costs that you'll have an increase, and utilities, that's another one that is going to be a fixed increase or a fixed expense that's going to have an increase. So yeah, it does seem like a large jump, and I completely get it, and it is. But I would say it's because in the last year, when I budgeted conservatively, looking at the prior years, like the few years before that, and there was the pandemic, and there were other costs that were not that we didn't have at that time. And so those are the pieces that now, okay, moving forward, I have more resources and more knowledge of what our expenses are and can plan accordingly for those, because now we've been back in session. We are adjusting for the increasing enrollment that we're having and the needs of the students that we have.
And how do we pay for it? That was the other question.
And then also the how do we pay for it? So a lot of districts do go into their, so when you have a budget that has a deficit, it's not what the cash is in your bank account. So because we run on a fiscal year and we levy for a calendar year, so we're not going to be all of a sudden to May and not have money. And that's why we short-term borrow, because we're going to have a deficit in our overall budget, but we're covering that deficit with our cash flow. So the expenses are still going to shift, but we're still going to cover those. But that's why we can't do that long term, because at some point, that's why we had the operational referendum. You have to have those additional funds to cover that expense that keeps carrying over.
So we're gonna pay for it with short-term borrowing.
Essentially, yeah. And operational referendum.
Well, not for this year. We
No.
don't have one. We can't pass a new one for this year.
No, not
That's-
for this year, but I mean, like that, yeah, but that's
But for
why.
this year, but for this year, our 700,000 deficit, the only way to cover that is with short-term borrowing, right?
Essentially, and then it's also trying to figure out, are there ways that we can decrease our expenses? Are there different things that we can get different revenue grants for? So you're going into this year with, these are what the projected expenses are and the projected revenue. We could come in lower with expenses, we could come in higher with revenue, but right now that's where it lands with the funding that we'll have with the state, and then also with tax payments.
Those are really
Okay.
good questions. Those are good answers too, Lindsay. So my, just as
Thank
like
you.
a simple follow-up, I think though, is like, I'm looking at the June 23 proposed budget,
Mhm.
and the total budget then was like 16 million. So it's not, so the now 5 million has happened in the last few months.
Yeah, so I would say because in June, and if you talk to a lot of districts, it's one of the big reasons that business managers do not like doing preliminary budgets, because it
Mhm.
really is early.
Mhm.
Because there's so many other expenses that hit in June 30th and after. Because
Right.
so for example, I don't get our transportation bill until after our preliminary budget is
Yeah.
set. That's another big expense. Food
Well,
service,
What's missing in June is the sped funds. It's that
Yeah.
simple.
yeah,
Sped-
some of those
that's
too.
what you said before, Carla.
It
Okay.
wasn't listed in June. Special
Oh.
education.
Okay.
And I definitely would have been able to speak more to that in June, and I appreciate
Sorry.
Alan, but like Alan
No,
just took it for me,
no.
so I appreciate that.
But I guess this speaks to a request that I think we have made intermittently about looking like at items. So I think we did a lot of hires over the summer coming into the school year. What would be helpful for me is to have an item on the agenda that talks about the budget impact of that hire. Or if we are approving an expense or a program, a policy like that, I think that should be one of the items in an executive summary that says, this is the impact to our budget. And maybe that's
One of the other pieces of
superfluous
that
with the monthly
summary is a
report, but
narrative. So at each month, it'll give you a narrative of what are the expenses that occur.
yeah, so
and
maybe
how
it won't,
impact.
but until that becomes like part of our repertoire, it would be nice for me to understand, like, so, because we're approving hires. Yes, we want all these people to
Right.
support our children. We also have to think about
Right.
this impact that it's
Yep.
created. So that, okay, that's my only comment. Anybody else? Andy? Ben? Connor?
Yeah, I want to hear if Andy has any historical context with Fund 80 and making
I'm
jumps
not
like
sure
this.
he's
I
there.
don't know if he's there.
And that will, okay.
He's been having to step
He
on
says
and off.
no one can hear him again. He's texting me.
So, and I hope you guys are having grace for us,
Oh, I have
because
to admit him
again,
again.
all of this information was given to us basically Friday night. And so we're digesting and we're trying to process, and these are really important decisions that we're, being asked to make. And it's just, I think it's important that we all feel comfortable to do what you're asking us to do.
Andy, can you hear us now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. Andy,
Well, I got a
Ben,
couple of questions, if I can here, because I am kind of, to put lightly, I am kind of concerned, because it's a huge deficit that we really didn't have a lot of notice for. I mean, it is huge, okay? And I am kind of concerned about that. You talk about short-term borrowing being used, to cover the debt. So one question I have for you is, then the interest that we pay in that short-term borrowing, that is still covered then by the levy, right? And then the other part of it is, I just want to make sure nothing's coming from the fund balance, is it?
Like last year, we ended up having to dip into fund balance. So if we end the year with the deficit, it does go into our fund balance.
And so there's so when we say that we're funding the difference with short-term borrowing, you're actually saying that it's still going to go through, and we're gonna have a hit to our fund balance. Is that correct?
Yes, because the short-term borrow is covering the expenses, like the actual physical expenses in the cash.
So how much to our fund balance are we going to have total?
Well, we went into the year at 4.5 million. In
And where are
Fund
we
10,
at now?
in Fund 10 alone. And we ended up using about $1 million of that at the end of last year.
We used $1 million of our fund balance last year? Okay, and what are we gonna use for this upcoming deficit?
Ideally, we won't have one. I'm trying to utilize ESSER funds if possible. That won't cover the entire amount. But again, that's also trying to figure out other ways that we could potentially cover it with like things like grants and other pieces. Like if we move some of our expenses from Fund 10 into Fund 27 and can use IDEA flow through grant money. It's trying to figure out creative ways to move our expenses. Is it an expense that we could put to Fund 50 that is considered a food service cost? So it's really looking at what our expenses are this year. I mean, ideally, we don't have to dip into fund balance. I really don't want to have to. But it's also trying to figure out how do we adjust for these increased expenses that we're seeing and we're not getting any additional revenue.
Well, so I do want to just kind of point something out. This is a little bit of Monday morning quarterbacking, but I don't know that we're seeing the whole picture. And I think that again is something that Danielle just mentioned, and we need to be able to get more visibility out of that, because I think that sometimes this information is coming to us in pieces. But for example, historically, we spent a lot of time, including using our referendum money over the last 10 years to rebuild our fund balance. And I don't want to get into a position where we're risking that or dipping into it again. So that's, one thing. And that is important to me. But the other part of this is that, with comes to the staffing, for example, and maybe how it happened, I didn't see it coming in the same way, but right before, our interim, administrator left, you know, we approved a lot of staff layoffs that were kind of viewed as, basically duplicative funding, coaches and so forth, that were duplicative in terms of, you know, what they were doing and so forth. And so a number of positions were, you know, kind of cut out, for, you know, cost savings, which at the time was a very hard assessment of, you know, not where we were in the pandemic, but where we need to be after the pandemic. And, you know, what I feel like is, and maybe I'm only realizing this now, is that we have kind of undone that or gone back in the other direction. And, you know, I need to understand a little bit more vision and I need to see down the road, you know, where we're headed. I don't know that we have any option other than to approve, you know, the budget tonight, but I feel like, you know, we're just chasing, you know, new numbers now, and we need to just kind of have maybe it's more regular, more consistent and more complete, you know, updates. Because I don't want to be in a position where in 1 month we're approving a budget that looks like, you know, we're breaking even. And another one, you know, looks like a couple months later, suddenly, you know, we're in a huge deficit. It may be the reality, but we just need to be more forward thinking in terms of how we anticipate these things and how we project, how we communicate them. Because I just feel, and this may be unfair, but I just feel a little bit surprised.
That's fair.
Thanks, Andy. Will you be doing forecasting in November? Last year we had an updated 5-year forecasting.
I will also provide at the committee of the whole meeting the timeline, so you'll be able to see, okay, November will be the 5-year, another one in February, and then also we get the monthly one.
Okay. Okay. You had a question for Andy,
yeah,
did you still?
Yeah.
Andy?
If he has any historical context to Fund 80 and, you know, going from 500,000 to 2.3 million in 1 year. I don't know if he has seen that before. I
know. And I'm still, you know, having some difficulty trying to understand that, frankly, because when I look at numbers, what I don't see, for example, is what those expenses were. There's a slide that shows projected expenses for fiscal year 24, 25, 26, so forth. I think over at Good Hope, but don't see anything you know, prior to that in that slide in that page 19. So I don't have any way to kind of characterize that, but I'm a little bit confused by the fact that our Fund 80 fund seems to be, you know, and maybe I missed this in having to step away, but it's under 700,000, but roughly consistent for the years 2019, 2024. And it looks like our spending is consistent here from 2024 forward. Maybe that's anticipating, you know, the repair and update in 6 million spread out over a few years. But you know, I think that the message that we always had when we were doing work over there, first of all, we've always been told that in essence, the renters are paying the way that we're breaking even on them because they're covering our operating expenses. Now, whether or not that was all of it or, you know, it was only part of it, maybe that's been kind of, you know, up in the air, but I would like to have understood that, you know, this is more of a concern, you know, in the last couple of years, because to me, it's a little bit of a surprise too, and one reason why I pushed back earlier on.
Well, to be fair, Andy, I think it came up through this facilities, these discussions, the tours, the planning, and for me, it became a question when we actually toured the building, and that's when I put it on Lindsay's radar, which was, you know, just recently. So I think that in terms of talking about Good Hope, we should definitely do that, and we should understand it better, but we should do that at a future meeting too. But I do understand. I think we're all acknowledging that we're wanting to have had a little more engagement on both sides, right? So we know that we still have something we have to do, and I guess I'm wondering if it's like a straw poll about like, I mean, to Andy's point, we need a budget.
I just
I-
could,
Yeah, please, yeah.
Andy, you had mentioned before that in prior budgets, we had kind of we had over budgeted in certain funds in order to bring them up higher. Would that be comparable to what we're trying to do to Fund 80 now? In preparation for expenses or to make them more appropriate?
I'm sorry, could you ask me that one more time there? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Can you hear me okay?
Historically, you
She-
mean?
She said you mentioned that historically we have built up other funds in anticipation of like future expenses. And now would you, I don't want to mess
Is
it up.
is that similar to
Is it-
what is happening in Fund 80 this year?
Similar to what we're attempting to do with Fund 80 this year? Are those past
I don't
practices
think that we've
similar?
ever bolstered Fund 80.
But
like this.
other funds, I think you mentioned, we've done it with.
I don't remember saying that actually.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay,
Well, maybe I misheard you.
okay. So, okay,
I just wanted to let Ben know we have 502,000 in fund balance and fund 80.
And then we would levy on top of that.
2.3, so it'd be
2.8.
2.8.
So Andy, are you comfortable with 2.3 million for Fund 80? Is that something? Like. It sounds like we've never done this before.
Well, if you're not, you can
Well, I'm just wondering.
vote to
he-
not approve.
Well, no, I
budget,
mean,
right?
we need to approve a budget, but. I guess I'm kind of stuck on the 2.3 million for Fund 80. And so I'm just curious if,
Sure. Does
It's
anyone else
helpful.
on the board have concerns specifically about the 2.3 such that it would warrant further discussion before we vote?
I currently do not have concerns about it. I'm
Okay.
personally a fan of having enough money to cover unexpected expenses.
Okay.
I'm a fan of that. It sounds like the mill rate isn't gonna go crazy because of it.
Right.
It's not money that's gonna be misappropriated or misused.
Mhm.
If we don't need all the money in the coming year, it'll still be there for use when we need it.
Mhm.
And we do that with other funds.
Okay, so that being said, if there aren't objections to ending discussion, we do have a motion on the table. If there are objections, then please let me know.
I'm ready to vote.
Okay. So the current motion is just, we've separated them out, but it's the budget, correct? A motion to. Who made it? Did I make it? No, I can't make it. Karn, okay, so Karn made the motion, I believe Carla seconded.
and this is for the budget.
This is for the board to approve the 2023-24 net expenditure budget of $23,733,585.84. I will do a roll call vote. Carla Pennington Cross.
Aye.
Daniel Bailey votes aye. Andrew Franklin.
Aye.
Ben Nguyen.
All right,
Karn Cronel.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Is there a motion for the board to approve the 2023-24 tax levy of $14,992,180?
Yes, I'll move.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I'm gonna do a roll call vote. Actually, I'm gonna do a voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
no,
Okay, the motion passes 4-1. And a board norms reflection. I know it's late.
What it was.
It was preparation.
So
It
I
was
did a great job.
participation and preparation. I will thank everybody for their participation. I think we all did our best to stay on topic and give each other space to express themselves.
I agree.
Anyone else?
It was a heavy lift tonight. Well done, everyone.
Mhm.
It's a good discussion.
No, I think.
I
it was good
appreciate
discussion.
everyone's
Thank you
questions.
for helping.
Yeah.
I
good
appreciate
discussion.
this board.
Anyone else? I know you want to go.
No, I'm just
Okay.
waiting to see if anyone has anything.
Okay.
Control and tech today.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor, voice vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Ah,
you.
yes.
Thank you. Do you know what we've?
Thank you.
Future agenda items. I noticed that we're leaving it out. It's okay though. We got.
I have a draft agenda. I can get it to you right now, so I don't forget.
Okay.
Ooh. We added, equity stuff and lenses, we added.
I know. We
I
can,
just dropped
we can,
it.